City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting recorded January 5th, 2026.
I have 6 o'clock. We will call the City Plan Commission meeting to order. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mayor Weezer.
Here.
Alderperson Kneebone.
Here.
Commissioner Artson.
Here.
Commissioner Beacom. Here. Commissioner Rice.
Here.
Commissioner Shady Strike.
Here.
Commissioner Schuler.
Here. And we do have everyone present. So item number 2 is the report of the December 1st meeting of the City Plan Commission. Those minutes and actions were included in your packet. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I have a question. I'll start. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. So we have a second.
I will second.
Thank you. Question?
What about the second meeting we had? Is that not for review now?
The
Special meeting
the
we
comp
had?
plan? Was it comp or zoning?
Zoning. Yeah. The minutes aren't ready yet, but they'll be available at the next.
All right. So
Well, we
we'll
will
do that
approve
next
those.
time. All right. Yep. Good. Thanks.
All right. Item number 3, 4, and 5 are all related.
We vote?
We did
Oh, I'm
that.
sorry.
And a second.
We did get a second from Laura.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. Item number 3, 4, and 5 are all public hearings related to the same development. We are going to start with a presentation of the item from our zoning administrator. I got to share this first. All right, Adam?
All right. Thank you, Mayor. So as folks are, I'm sure, familiar with when reviewing the agenda packet, the requests before you for this item and the subsequent 2 are focused on the northeast quadrant of the intersection of Hoover Road and County Road HH. That'll be on the next slide. You can see the proposed land division. I'll start first. As part of this proposed development of this northeast quadrant. So you can see that there's 3 proposed lots to be created that would be serviced by a new city public street with access off of Hoover Road and County Road HH. Kwik Trip would be, if approved, would be located on that proposed Lot 1. Lot 2 and Lot 3, in terms of specific development plans, have not been submitted, nor are they finalized at this time, but obviously if and when that point comes down the road, that'll be something that'll be subject to review either in-house or by this commission, depending on the exact type of request. And then I'll make just one quick side note. So the proposed roadway that I mentioned, there will be, if these conditional use permits are approved, the right-of-way dedication and acceptance, along with amending the city's official street map, would be items that would need to get brought before you at a later date for consideration. So next slide, you can see the proposed site plan for the Kwik Trip development. You can see, again, on proposed Lot 1, the proposed convenience store would be located more on the western half of the proposed lot, with 3 access points, 2 off of the east-west proposed street, along with 1 off of the proposed north-south oriented street. There's no access that is proposed nor would be allowed off of County Road HH, ergo the need for these new public streets to provide that access. The proposed fueling area would be situated to the east of the proposed convenience store and car wash. And then, as you can see, the proposed stormwater features, along with the parking lots, kind of wrapping around the proposed convenience store and the gas station canopy. So next slide, just want to take a step back and talk about our groundwater protection ordinance and the status of that ordinance pre and post 2022. 2022 being the year when our current groundwater protection ordinance was adopted. So prior to 2022, essentially our groundwater protection ordinance, for each of the 2 zones that we had at that time, it listed land uses that were permitted by right and prohibited outright. If there were, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, if there were land uses that were considered prohibited but allowed within the base zoning of a specific property, then that proposed land use could have been considered by way of a conditional use permit. that would be, just some recent examples. Really, most of the car washes on the east side of town went through this route where, since it was allowed within the base zoning designation of that property, it was subject to the conditional use permit review of this commission and the council. Post 2022, they saw some rather significant changes to the groundwater protection ordinance. As far as land use policy is concerned, it specifically outlined what land uses would be conditional within each of those two zones. Instead of keeping it more open-ended, it went into the specifics of what land uses are conditional within both zones B and C. As you can see, gas stations are listed within both of those zones. These changes were unanimously approved by this commission in January of 2022, 4 years ago to the month, as well as unanimously approved by the council in January of 2022. I guess we'll skip the next slide. There's staff recommendations and the conditions, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. We'll actually go to the slide that's showing on your screen. For commission members, I'm sure this is not new, because on the bottom of every staff report for conditional use permits, I always include a kind of a rough blurb talking about Act 67 and some of the things to be cognizant of when considering conditional use permit requests. And really what's showing on the screen is just a reminder, not only for these requests, but for any conditional use permits that are brought before you in the future as well. Number one, first bullet point, meaning that conditional use permits can only be denied based on substantial evidence, and substantial evidence is defined essentially as meaning that you have to use facts and information and not preferences or speculation. So you have to base information on what will happen versus what could happen. Second bullet point, really paraphrasing this, what it says is that if a applicant meets the standards of outlined within the zoning code or agrees to meet the standards of the zoning code, the municipality, the governing body, has to grant the conditional use permit. And then the last section shown on the slide, I'm not going to read this verbatim because it's a lot of text, and I apologize for that, but basically this gets at the heart of why Act 67 was adopted in the first place. Pre-2017, there were municipalities that would be denying conditional use permits for reasons not relevant to the request at hand. They didn't like the applicant, they felt that the proposed use or service being provided would represent an oversaturation in their community, variety of different reasons. Essentially what this quote says is that the greatest discretion that a community has, that a municipality has in determining what land uses are and are not allowed on a piece of property is when you adopt a zoning code and when you amend the zoning code. When a municipality places a particular land use as a conditional use within a district, by that very act, it says that that listed use is compatible with the district, so long, as part of the conditional use permit review, so long as it meets the standards outlined in the zoning code. Really the last point is that really the request, the application that's submitted for a conditional use permit is not this invitation, not this invite to reopen that conversation as to if that land use should be allowed within that given piece of property. The fact of the matter is the gas stations, as I mentioned, I think 2 or 3 slides ago, are considered a conditional use within both zones B and C. That item was deliberated not only between this commission and the council, but internally through the various jurisdictions that operate a municipal well. These conversations were held at that time, and the request before you folks tonight is to determine if the proposed land use can meet the standards outlined in the code. So going back to the...
Hang on, Adam, just because I need some clarification on this. That top part where it talks about substantial evidence, if I say I think the car wash is going to decrease my property value, or the additional traffic is going to create an unsafe environment for dog walkers, does that constitute substantial evidence, or is that merely the speculation. When you say substantial evidence, what does that mean?
So using that example specifically, that would be considered speculation unless that there's specific data that could substantiate that there's going to be a decrease in property values or there's going to be an increase in traffic.
So if I were to hypothetically, let's call it a Wiesenberger. If we were to have a conditional use for that, and I could prove that the Wiesenberger in another community decreased the property value, that would be evidence-based, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And then go back to the previous slide. So the commissioners, as you can see in the packet, recommendation is to approve this first conditional use permit request subject to all 30 of these conditions shown in the staff report and shown on the slide. I'll actually invite Director Lemke, I think he's in the overflow room at the moment, to provide just a synopsis of some of the conditions shown on the
For those of you who don't know, Director Lemke is our Director of Public Utilities, which includes water, wastewater, stormwater, and then the airport and transit and
Fiber.
all the other cool stuff. Oh yeah, the fiber community area network. So, Joel, if you could, I'm sorry, Director, if you could, there's 30 of them here, and I know they're hard to read on the screen. They are available in the packet, so if you have a packet or you want to go online and grab the packet, all of these conditions are set forth as a staff recommendation. Can you touch on some of the more relevant ones and what it means and what the repercussions could be should they not be followed?
Yeah, and I'll point out, because I was struggling with the packet a minute ago, sorry. Page 10, the bottom number of your packet, page 10 of 166 is where I'm starting. Staff recommendations there. I want to point out to the commission that most of these are copy-paste from conditional uses for gas stations in Zone C previously, right? I also want to point out these would be the same for Zone C and B, how we'd write these up, so there's no difference there. So, but in the past we were talking about C. Today we're talking about C. So 1 through a lot of them, let's call it 19, are very much repeats, and they cover things like double well tanks with interstitial monitoring, audible, visible alarms that alarm if there's anything in that space. So that's between the product and the tank that should be empty, whether that's water, whether it's fuel. I don't know if it'll catch a mouse or something, who knows. But
Director, when you say double hull tanks, what does that mean?
Double walled. So
Double-walled.
products in one tank, there's a tank around the inside tank, and the space between those two tanks is what they refer to as interstitial space. That space is continuously monitored.
Yeah.
There's double wall piping, there's certain kinds of sumps, all pipes drain backwards into a sump, those are monitored and everything like that. All that is pretty routine for us already, in so much as we've done a couple or a few of them in the last 10 years or so, I'd say. If we get down to item 21, which is on the following page, this is a new item. What we realized is that while the conditions were covering a lot of protection, upfront design, that kind of stuff, we didn't have anything that pointed to performance standards. So right now, if something happens to any site, we go to the DNR for how do we handle that, right? There's a spill. What's the standard on remediation? Things like preventative action levels, maximum contaminant levels, that kind of thing. We're not necessarily wanting to have to lean on that. So we started to work into other things, right? So 21 here, just for the sake of putting it right out there, any spills, releases, leaks, or discharges shall be remediated by the owner at the owner's expense to a level that poses no risk and has no impact on any municipal water supply. I'm sure nobody's forgotten, but what we're talking about there is Village of Whiting's water supply, roughly 1,500 feet to the west. Remediation shall be completed in full compliance with all applicable laws, regulations. That's the part that we're going to address a little stiffer, if you will, through the spill response plan. Spill response plan is actually mentioned later.
23.
23, thank you. Oh, I started them. Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah. That's a document that hasn't been fully submitted and has not been approved, but that's where we get into more details about the response to that. But I think it's 22, talks about just some immediate testing. And this isn't giving away the ability to determine if something's good enough or not, because what we're doing in 21 is saying no risk, no impact, right? So all of these working together, and on top of it, we put more detail into the spill response plan that we'll be working through. That's kind of the different part of this versus the ones in the past. I'll just kind of stop there.
Director, I want to clarify a few other things too. The spill response plan, you said that's not formulated yet.
We have a draft of a very standard spill response plan that we're going to propose amendments to before we finalize it.
Right, and any operation would not be able to begin until you approve the spill response plan, whatever that happens to be.
Right.
So say, approving this with the conditions, the 30 conditions outlined by staff, without having that one in place, really is not an issue, because the conditional use is requiring that be in place.
Mm-hmm.
So no operation would be allowed to begin until that is in place and approved by you. Is that correct?
That's correct. And just to back up from that, the reason there's no, it's going to be a long plan, right? You can't put it all in conditions, but that's really why 21 is there, to say no harm, no impact. Those are right in the conditions. We're going to identify how that is in the spill response plan.
Okay. And how many, I was probably putting you on the spot, I think I have a ballpark number, but how many gas stations or things like this in the city have existing conditions like this already?
I think there's 3.
3, okay.
3, right.
And are all 3 in wellhead protection zones?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's at least 2. I think it's 3 though.
Anything else you want to cover on here?
No, like I said, the rest is the stuff we've worked through in the past. It's a lot of repeat language. I wanted to point out the things that kind of refer to some level of performance standard in the what-if case.
Okay.
If I may add, Mayor, just provide some context for 2 conditions later on the slide, not tied to the wellhead piece of it. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. This would be condition number 27, saying that the County Highway Committee has to grant the waiver from the Portage County subdivision ordinance for that proposed access point off of County Road HH.
What does that mean?
Basically approving the creation of that intersection.
Okay, if the County Highway Commission committee says, no, we're not going to allow that here?
It would likely significantly change the site design, so much so that it would have to go back before this commission for reconsideration. Yeah,
that was the question. If the county says, no, you got to move it an extra 100 feet to the west or east or whatever it is, are those things significant enough to come back and be reviewed by your office?
It would be significant enough where it'd have to go before this commission.
Okay.
And then lastly, and kind of tying into that comment, the last one, condition 30, that staff shall have the ability to approve minor amendments to the submitted site plan. This is common conditions, as commissioners may recall. Really, the intent of this is that these minor incidental changes that are being proposed after the fact, that is something that I have the ability to review. So to give an example, say landscaping plan proposes some native plantings within a terminal island, and the applicant 6 months from now says, hey, I want to plant some shrubs there instead. That's something that's considered a minor deviation that I have the ability to review. If, for example, and this is not being proposed, I know this was a concern raised by some folks, that say Kwik Trip a year from now would wish to utilize more land beyond this lot 1 that's being proposed, that would be considered a substantial change that would have to go back before this body. So.
All right. So before we open the public hearing for this item, and this, the item that we're on is for the conditional use permit to operate a gas station. The next one will be to operate a car wash, and the third one will be an off-premise sign. So if we can try and keep I know they're all related, but if we could try and keep comments germane to each individual item, that would be helpful. If you stray, that's not a big deal. We got a lot of people here tonight and a lot of people to get through that want to be heard, so we want to make sure everybody gets a fair shot at it. We try and stay as close to on topic as possible. Commissioners, before I open up this public hearing, do you have any clarifying questions from the director, the zoning administrator, the utilities director, city attorney? We got a couple of alderpersons here. Any questions for anybody? Yes, sir.
I guess maybe if, excuse me, Director Kuhn could speak about how the developer or Kwik Trip was involved in the process of creating some of these conditions, specifically related to kind of the safety around operating the convenience store, as well as the traffic kind of reorientation. I mean, were they hand in hand, or is it mostly relying on third parties to, like, again, come up with some of those conditions?
Yeah, so at least the creation of these conditions, that's something that myself, Director Lemke, and the Kwik Trip folks, we've worked with one another for probably a good week and a half. I'll give kudos to Kwik Trip. There's applicants that I've worked with in the past where you present conditions and there's a lot of angst and just anger in general. There wasn't that instance here. I mean, there was some back and forth. There was some, hey, I'm going to propose this. No, I'd actually like to see this instead. Mm-hmm. But yes, there was a lot of back and forth conversation, phone calls. As far as like the traffic piece, I guess I'll defer maybe during the public hearing if Justin, if you want to comment on Kwik Trip's role through the TIA.
Yeah, let's not do it during the public hearing. Let's do it after the public hearing.
After the
public hearing is really just taking testimony, not really interaction.
Okay.
And then afterwards, we'll have a discussion about everything on top of that. Fair?
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Anything else?
Not at this time.
All right, then with that, I will declare the public hearing open. If you wish to testify on the conditional use to operate a gas station, please step to the lectern, provide your name and address, and provide that testimony.
I'll be brave and start.
There you go.
My name is Chris Mechnick. I'm a retired groundwater scientist with about 40 years of experience in groundwater and public health issues. I live at 4416 2nd Street in Stevens Point. Am I allowed to ask a question?
You can, but you won't get an answer until after the public hearing.
Okay.
Make sure the zoning administrator writes it down.
All right. My question is, based on what I've just heard here, it seems as though the groundwater protection plan will not get a public hearing. Because this is going to come after?
So the groundwater protection plan for the city?
I think
for this development. We're saying that
yes.
the director.
That's what this is right now.
Okay.
So the proposal and the recommendations by staff are these 30 conditions.
Okay.
And if the 30 conditions are met, staff is recommending approval, is that correct?
Correct. I think what...
For the gas station?
Yeah, I think what she's asking is the spill prevention plan that
the spill
director
prevention
would have
plan.
to...
Yes.
Yeah, as proposed, the director
So,
would be...
no, you can certainly voice some comments in regards to that, and we'll take notes and make sure that they're under consideration when that plan is formulated. Does that help?
I guess I would have thought that something that important would have had an additional meeting like this for people to make comments, but it appears that that's not the case.
Okay.
Okay. Second thing, can I give a handout?
Yeah, Chris, do you want to take those and distribute them? Normally, we wouldn't do this. We'd want it ahead of time.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But I know this is a hot button issue because, well, nobody in the audience has it. Nobody at home has it.
Right.
So it's a little inconvenient for them, but we will make sure that that is accessible tomorrow morning at our clerk's office. So anybody that wants the handout will have access to it through the city clerk's office tomorrow morning.
Okay. If you would please start at that end so that the commissioners get the top copies. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay. What I would like to talk to you about, perhaps obviously, is some ways that I think the groundwater protection and monitoring plans could be strengthened. So that is the main thing I want to talk to you about. But first I'd like to share some history about this parcel of land, because some of us were young and were not even present when in 1995 this parcel became part of the city of Stevens Point. It was part of the town of Plover, and that was a boundary adjustment. It was the first planned annexation in the state of Wisconsin. And part of the justification for that planned annexation was protection of the Whiting well field. The Village Green subdivision was annexed, as was this parcel that we're talking about, and the residents of Village Green were connected to city water and sewer because it was thought that their septic systems were contaminating the village water supply. So the residents of Village Green experienced a lot of expense and disruption in being asked to protect the Whiting water supply. And so I think their opinion should count now when it comes to other uses that may also affect the Whiting public water supply. As you all know and you've seen, in that boundary adjustment agreement, the City of Stevens Point wellhead protection ordinance will be used to protect Whiting's municipal wellfield and recharge area by restricting and regulating new development within the boundary adjustment area. But if we fast forward even to today, our Chapter 23 of our zoning code still says that the purpose of this wellhead protection ordinance is to institute land use regulations and restrictions to protect the municipal water supplies of the villages of Amherst, Junction City, Plover, and Whiting, and the city of Stevens Point, and to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of the residents of Portage County. So we already talked about, I think, perhaps that the city, or the parcel is in Stevens Point Zone C for wellhead protection. It is also in Whiting's Zone B. Whiting does not have extraterritorial jurisdiction or whatever it is. They can only control land within their boundaries with their wellhead protection ordinance. And they have gas stations as a prohibited use in Zone B. So were this parcel in the village of Whiting, that use would not be allowed. They don't have that authority apparently outside of their village. So you are the only people who can protect that for them in that way if you see fit to do so. The handout that I gave you illustrates a little bit about the specifics of why the Whiting wellfield is particularly vulnerable to contamination. If you look at the first page, and I'm sorry, audience, that you're not able to see this, but we have a large green swath that goes across the bottom of toward the bottom of the page, goes all the way out to the glacial moraines, and that is the recharge area for the Whiting wellfield. So all of the water that is pumped out of the Whiting wells originated as rain or snow somewhere in that green swath, and it's all flowing toward those Whiting wells. When you go way out to the end of the recharge area, it takes 100 years for water to get from that point to the Whiting wells. Now, if you'll flip to the second page, we have a close-up of the area closer to the Whiting wells. And on this map, I have put a little blue oval that shows you where the parcel in question is. So the parcel in question that we're talking about tonight is somewhere between the 1-year time of travel and the 5-year time of travel for those wells. If you were to sort of eyeball it and estimate, you might say 3 years. The time of travel is the time between when a drop of water, which fell as rain or snow, soaks into the ground, becomes groundwater, and moves into the Whiting well. So we're looking at a relatively short time frame here in which, if contamination were to get into the groundwater, it would make its way to the well in a pretty short period of time. Now, in a 1988 report, and I would love to hear Commissioner Arnson's thought on this if it's permitted, because this was in the 1988 report from the Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey, and they estimated that groundwater flow from within the recharge area toward the Whiting well field is about 1,070 feet per year. Now that sounds like a lot to me. That's about 3 feet per day. Does that sound?
Ma'am, we can't do interaction during the public hearings.
I'm sorry.
The
Okay.
Commissioner can answer your question afterwards if he chooses to.
Okay, great. So anyway, if that was correct, then the time of travel from the parcel to the wells would be approximately a year and a half. And for that reason, I think that there could be some strengthening of the sort of outline of a groundwater protection plan that we have here. And I've given you that on page 3 of the handout. I don't know if, how's my time? You want to?
We're going to give a lot of latitude. So,
Okay.
But please be cognizant there's a lot of other people that.
I do understand that, yes. So we have 3. One of them relates to the car wash. Sorry, I can come back if you'd rather not hear it now, but it's quick.
That's completely okay. Now it's fine.
So because benzene found in gasoline is a known human carcinogen, a groundwater protection plan should be required. It should be, all of these plans should be prepared by qualified professionals, and in my opinion, they should be submitted and subjected to public comment before the permit is approved. I don't understand the process by which we're going to approve a groundwater protection plan, assume that the groundwater protection plan that is going to happen the way you want it to. But be that as it may, we have a number of items there. The amount of gasoline to be stored, details on the tanks and the pipes, any available evidence on the lifespan of these things, full disclosure of chemicals that are located on the site, and a map of that so that in case of an emergency, it would be known where these chemicals were stored, and any other information that this professional deems essential. We also think, we being me and a few other people who have talked about this, that there should be a plan to notify officials in Stevens Point, Whiting, Plover, and the Wisconsin DNR spills hotline within 2 hours of a detected leak or spill. And it should restrict fuel tank filling to daytime hours because this has been found to reduce accidents. There's also something about a groundwater monitoring and remediation plan, which is not fully fleshed out here. We do not know right now the locations of these monitoring wells. We do not know the construction details, how deep they will be, whether there will be different depths at the same location or not. We don't know the contaminants that will be tested. We don't have a provision that a certified laboratory will be involved in the testing. We need to think carefully about the monitoring schedule. If the groundwater flow is in fact that fast, is it enough to say that they test every 3 months and then they have 2 months further in which they can respond if they do find contamination? That's 5 months from potentially from the time that the contamination occurred, if it occurred on the day after the monitoring. And if it only takes a year and a half to get to the wells, then maybe there needs to be a tighter time frame for how often they need to sample and how quickly they need to respond. Something that wasn't talked about with the car wash, there is new information that car washes are a significant source of PFAS. They're a whole group of forever chemicals. We're hearing a lot about them in groundwater and drinking water. They are highly mobile. They move very quickly with the water. They're found in many automotive products. Even if Kwik Trip does not use products that contain PFAS, as the cars are in the car wash, past car waxes and polishes, the engine degreasers and lubricants and other things may wash off the cars, and then get into the sewer system, which is then goes to the city sewage treatment plant. But I think consideration should also be given to a leak prevention plan for the car wash, because if there should be a leak and the contamination doesn't get into the sewer system but rather gets into the ground, that could provide these contaminants that could make its way to groundwater as well and to the city wells. So the last page is a number of references that I collected for you if you want to read further on any of the topics that I've talked about.
Thank you very much. The public hearing is still open, and as I said, this document will be available at the city clerk's office tomorrow morning.
Okay. I have some of the same comments that Chris did. My name is Janet Smith. I live at 520 Elm Court, which is a mile southwest of the proposed gas station and car wash. The Whiting well field is immediately north of Elm Court, and McDill Elementary is a half-mile west or so. The entire area is downgraded with regards to groundwater flow, and given that the proposed gas station and car wash are within the well protection, head protection zone, just like Chris said, I'm concerned, very concerned about the potential for groundwater contamination. And once contaminated, groundwater is extremely difficult and costly to clean up. I know because I monitored and regulated the impacts of leaking underground storage tanks for years, and I've got extensive regulatory experience with the state. Besides the unfortunate fact that the zoning change from residential to commercial use was approved against staff recommendations, why not follow staff guidance to ensure our groundwater is clean and to be consistent with adjacent land uses, and that there are already 4 gas stations within a 2-mile radius, which begs the question of the need for the project, which if you're a NEPA person like I am, then you have a purpose and need for every project. Besides those 2 issues, the proposed conditions for the car wash in particular, as was mentioned, are weak. We need to know who will be enforcing oversight of these conditions. Will it be Kwik Trip staff? Will it be consultants? Will it be the city staff? And if it's the city staff, do they have the time and resources to deal with this? And as was mentioned, PFAS, or forever chemicals, are found in car wash waxes, and they can be washed off of the cars. How will we know if that's been washed into the groundwater and gets into our wells? Same thing. Whiting, which supplies our drinking water, does not have any PFAS treatment, and once it's in there, it's going to be really costly. Who ends up paying for it? The taxpayers. So again, it's just so hard to clean up, if not impossible, once it gets into the water. So I'm aware that the Village of Whiting shares those concerns, and they've sent a letter to all of staff in the city. Additionally, the monitoring equipment in the plant is supposed to be tested once a year. What if something goes wrong 1 month after testing? As was mentioned, there should be a tighter time frame. There's 11 months before a leak would be discovered, and then that's enough time potentially to pollute the water table. So, and who tests it? Kwik Trip, the consultants, the city, who's on the hook for payment? The taxpayers. And finally, the additional 24-hour light pollution, noise, and traffic impacts from a gas station are certainly negative impacts from this project that'll disrupt the residential nature and neighborhoods. Again, it's inconsistent with residential land use. So I urge stricter conditions if this permit is issued, or preferably not approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public hearing remains open.
I have a handout, but it's not necessarily what they have to look at. It will all be summarized by people in our neighborhood talking.
Okay, how about if we just hand those out to Chris, and we'll just make them available. We'll make them available to everybody tomorrow.
And these are a list of people who are submitting that. So I'm Deanne Donahue, 3395 Howard Avenue. I've been a resident of Village Green Estates since 1994. In December of '95, the town of Plover and Stevens Point adopted a cooperative boundary adjustment plan, which covered the annexation of Village Green. The primary purpose of the plan was to protect Whiting's wellhead, as many of the 225 residences' wells tested were high in nitrates and many had failing septic systems. Within this plan, it stated that in '93, due to the concern for Whiting's water supply, all the surrounding communities and Portage County adopted wellhead protection ordinances, which new development is to abide by. As you can see, protecting the wellheads has always been a priority for all surrounding municipalities. It's even more important today as we see so many areas struggling with polluted water. And as Mayor Wiesa so eloquently stated at the August 4th Plan Commission meeting at hour 1, 16 minutes, 26 seconds, and I quote, "Once you pee in a pool, you can't unpee. That's important. Protecting our groundwater is paramount," unquote. I did like that.
I used that more than once.
This new development is less than 1,500 feet from Whiting's wellhead. This is paramount, and extra groundwater and human health protections need to be in place. Reviewing Kwik Trip's conditional use permit standard 1, the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. Is this conditional use permit standard met? No. And the explanation as to why. Stevens Point's Zoning Code Chapter 23.02 4E1 states certain land use practices and activities can seriously threaten or degrade groundwater quality. The purpose of this wellhead protection ordinance is to institute land use regulations and restrictions to protect the municipal water supplies of the villages of Amherst, Junction City, Plover, and Whiting, and the city of Stevens Point, and to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of the residents of Portage County. Now, it's very peculiar that the staff report does not include this, as it is in our zoning code. The 18-acre parcel, as people have said, it's both in Stevens Point's wellhead protection area, where a gas station would be a conditional use, and in Whiting's wellhead protection district, where it's a prohibited. Whiting's wellhead protection ordinance is 31.054I that talks about that. Public health will be endangered by this development. Gasoline contains benzene. According to a report from the American Cancer Society, people are exposed to benzene through gasoline fumes and automobile exhaust. Exposure to it is linked to a higher risk of cancer, particularly leukemia and other blood cell cancers. Groundwater is also vulnerable. A report to the legislature from Wisconsin Groundwater Coordinating Council states identifying and monitoring known sources of volatile organic compounds, VOCs, is key to the protection of drinking water. As of June 2025, the DNR monitors over 700 landfills, tracks 21,000 leaking tanks, and has recorded about 46,000 spills. VOCs are chemicals that evaporate when exposed to air, including gasoline. Long-term exposure to VOCs may cause cancer, liver damage, spasms, and impaired speech, hearing, and vision. The Bureau of Remediation and Redevelopment Tracking System, BRRTS, is a database that reports potential contamination and cleanup activities. Since January 1st of 2015, there has been 11,409 gasoline spills in Wisconsin. The following were specifically at Kwik Trips in Wisconsin, some in Portage County. And no, I didn't look at all 11,000. Many of the spills were by people pumping gas and not paying attention, losing 1 to 50 gallons of gas on the pavement. Some of these led to groundwater and soil contamination taking 2 years to clean up, and then not 100% clean. For other spills, Kwik Trip has had to provide assessment of vapor intrusion pathways. Another spill was due to a delivery truck with a leak in its saddle tank. A 50-gallon spill happened due to a transformer rupture causing a pump to not shut off. What do these examples mean? Human error causes groundwater contamination. Can't eliminate human error. Equipment fails? It's not if, but when? Will double-walled tanks and piping leak? Is there evidence from monitored installations that they won't leak in 50 years? How often are the tanks replaced? What is state-of-the-art today is not tomorrow. So per this evidence, Kwik Trip has not met conditional use permit standard. The staff report also contains some items needing additional consideration. Number 7 states, all monitoring shall be continuous monitoring, meaning that an alarm shall sound or proper authorities shall be immediately notified if a leak is detected. I think the staff may want to proofread this. How do you know the monitoring system works? Where's the evidence it will work for 50 years? There's no way to literally see if underground tanks are leaking. Numbers 12, 20, and 23 have been discussed and probably will be discussed a little more. So I agree with those, but how can a plan be evaluated when it does not yet exist? Remediation of groundwater contamination will be difficult after it has traveled. There are many buildings in the way as the pollutants move towards the wellhead, making cleanup complicated. Imagine a leak happens the day after monitoring is completed. It'll be 3 months before the next monitoring, and then Kwik Trip is given an additional 2 months to delineate the spill if it is detected. Contaminants can travel far in 5 months. Then there's additional time for a plan to be enacted. What incentive does Kwik Trip have to respond quickly to a spill? The purpose and intent section of the Stevens Point zoning code states, zoning regulations are intended to promote public health, safety, and welfare, protect water, sanitation, and drainage, conserve natural resources, stabilize property values, and prevent land uses that create hazards or dangers. This is in Chapter 23.014. The city's conditional use provisions further authorize the Plan Commission to impose conditions necessary to prevent harm and mitigate impacts associated with high-intensity uses. Chapter 23.0119. Given the proximity of this site to sensitive groundwater resources and established residential neighborhoods, the following conditions are respectfully requested. Requested conditions, they all refer to the zoning code 23.014 and 23.0119. Number 1, groundwater protection plan required prior to permit approval. Pursuant to the city's obligation to protect public health and natural resources and its authority to require site-specific documentation for conditional uses, a comprehensive groundwater protection plan shall be submitted, reviewed, and approved as part of the conditional use permit. Approval of the permit shall not be granted contingent upon a future or post-approval submittal. The Plan Commission must have the opportunity to evaluate the adequacy of groundwater safeguards before determining that the use is appropriate at this location. 2, chemical storage disclosure and limitations. The applicant shall provide full disclosure and limits on chemical storage, quantities, location, and use, including a listing of chemicals on site and a map showing locations. Storage or use of any chemicals not expressly identified and approved shall be prohibited without additional Plan Commission review and approval. Number 3, air quality monitoring for benzene and volatile organic compounds. To protect public health and welfare, baseline and ongoing air quality monitoring for benzene and other related volatile organic compounds shall be required, or alternatively, the applicant shall demonstrate through third-party analysis that air quality impacts will not adversely affect adjacent residential areas. A mitigation plan identifying action thresholds and corrective measures shall be submitted, with results made available to the city. This matters because groundwater impacts are irreversible. Benzene is classified by EPA as a known human carcinogen for all routes of exposure. Prevention must occur before approval, not after construction. 4, daytime fuel tank filling requirement. Fuel tank filling operations shall be restricted to daytime hours because this has been found to reduce accidents and ensures better visibility and immediate response in the event of a spill. This is a reasonable operational condition authorized under Chapter 23.0119. And finally, number 5, mandatory spill and leak notification protocol. Requires spill and leak notification within 2 hours to Stevens Point, Whiting, Plover, and DNR groundwater section manager. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public hearing is still open. And in the interest of time, I know some of the things were repeated, and I expect that that's going to happen a lot, but feel free to say that, you agree with everything the previous speaker said, or some of the highlights that some of the other speakers said, if you intend to just duplicate the testimony that was provided, just as a courtesy to everybody else. Go ahead, Deb.
Okay, I'm Deb Zaski. I live at 5222 Forest Circle South. Since 1995, prior to the city owning the property, or prior to us becoming part of the city. And I know when we had talked about that previously, we were told that plan was in place since 1995 for this to be the use of B4. But that was after I lived there. So we didn't see that plan prior to buying our property. But I want to speak briefly and address traffic and pedestrian safety, because these impacts are often underestimated at the approval stage, and once development is operating, they are very difficult to correct. Stevens Point zoning ordinance is clear that land use decisions must lessen congestion, promote street safety, and protect pedestrian mobility, particularly in residential areas. A high-volume commercial use like a gas station and car wash introduces traffic patterns that are fundamentally different from what these neighborhood streets were designed to handle. Planning best practices emphasize that actual post-opening traffic conditions, not just projections, should be evaluated. This is why we are questioning a required traffic study 6 to 12 months after opening, with mandatory mitigation if conditions fail or cut-through traffic increases. We are also requesting clear, no cut-through signage, traffic calming measures such as additional stop control, and enhanced pedestrian crossing safety. This aligns with the Federal Highway Administration's traffic calming e-primer, which provides best practices for reducing cut-through traffic and improving safety on residential streets, including stop controls and pedestrian enhancements. These requests are not meant to stop development. They are meant to ensure that traffic impacts are addressed proactively rather than reactively, and that neighborhood streets remain safe and functional for the families who already live here. Thoughtful traffic conditions protect residents, reduce long-term costs to the city, and align directly with the intent of the zoning code. While we do not wish for a gas station to be here, we also understand that we obviously don't have control over that. I have loved my neighborhood for 30 years. I don't anticipate I will for the next 30. But I guess that's not up for grabs here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
I just have 2 information packets that are supportive of my
Sure.
topic of
No,
conversation.
that's okay.
Yeah, it's
in the
not to
future, and maybe
follow-
this never comes up again, because I understand nobody outside City Hall really knows policy and
There's
things like that.
just
But
2 there.
if you have something to submit to anybody, it would be nice to have it at least a day or 2 ahead of time.
I do think this was kind of difficult with
Yeah,
the Christmas
it
and then the
was. I
New
get it.
Year's break, and it's like submit stuff 3 days
Yeah.
before, and then the city offices are
Just for the
closed, and
record,
you're
the county
like,
board doesn't even allow it. So
Okay.
we're way cooler.
yeah, okay. Well, my name is Alicia Screenis, and I live at 5316 Forest Circle in the Village Green neighborhood adjacent to the proposed development. I do have a question that may be answered later, but my question is, when as a citizen of Stevens Point do I get to come in and just say, I don't want a gas station, and not have to say, these are all the reasons why, because I was not allowed to do that over the summer because we were told we can't talk about the gas station? And when are my 5 other meeting opportunities? Because you said we have 6 meetings before this will happen. So those are my 2 questions. And then my question I'm asking, which I don't want an answer for, is why does Stevens Point need another gas station? Did you know that the greater Stevens Point area has 18 gas stations, at least? I might have miscounted. These are serving the approximately 42,000 people of the Stevens Point area. According to online sources, a single gas station can be supported by an estimated 3,000 to 6,000 people. That comes out only to about 14 gas stations at the high estimate. Did you know 17 of the 18 gas stations are located within 5 driving miles of the proposed Kwik Trip? 17 of these can be reached within 10 minutes of driving. With this many gas stations currently, we are not in desperate need of another gas station. There hasn't been any study done, to my knowledge, that supports a need in our community for another gas station. Because there's not a desperate need, this could allow the time for a developer of a gas station to look at other potential areas that would be less of a negative impact on the community and neighborhood, impacts that you have heard of and will hear in regards to contamination of air and water, which increases the chance of negative health effects, noise pollution, light pollution, increase in traffic, making it harder to safely and reasonably access our neighborhood and public areas, such as the Green Circle Trail. In my opinion, we do not need another gas station, and we do not need it on the corner of a residential neighborhood. Although there may not necessarily be a need, we recognize that this development has been proposed as such with a gas station, and while there are many questions around the why of it, that doesn't prevent us from wanting our voice heard. Believing it is not needed shouldn't negate our voice on how to properly set up this land use moving forward. I want to focus specifically on lighting because it is one of the most permanent and hardest to reverse impacts of commercial development placed next to homes. Excessive or poorly designed commercial lighting is not just an aesthetic concern. According to the International Dark Sky Association, light trespass and glare from commercial sites near residences is associated with sleep disruption, increased stress, and long-term health impacts, particularly for children and older adults. The American Medical Association has also issued guidance warnings that nighttime exposure to bright blue-rich LED lighting can disrupt circadian rhythms and is linked to adverse health outcomes. From a planning perspective, best practices are clear. When commercial uses are placed next to residential neighborhoods, lighting must be minimized, shielded, and oriented away from homes. This aligns directly with the purpose and intent of the Stevens Point Zoning Code, which requires land use decisions to protect public health, provide adequate light, and stabilize residential property values. For that reason, we are requesting specific enforceable conditions. Dark sky compliant lighting only with fully shielded downward facing fixtures, no illuminated signage, canopy lighting, or architectural lighting facing residential properties, reduced lighting levels during overnight hours except where minimum lighting is required for safety, no digital, animated, or color-changing signage. These are not unusual requests. Many Wisconsin communities impose stricter lighting conditions when commercial uses abut homes because once lighting is installed, neighbors have little recourse if it proves intrusive. We're asking you to ensure that lighting is treated as a health, safety, and compatibility issue, not an afterthought. Thoughtful lighting design protects residents, preserves neighborhood character, and still allows the business to operate successfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
Hi, my name is John Yeager. I live at 3217 Olympia Ave, and I also own commercial property on the corner of at 2901 Hoover Road. I wanted to begin just by saying that, and I moved to Stevens Point in 1976, so I've seen a lot here. But I wanted to begin by saying this. Stevens Point, in my lifetime, has taken a lot of pride in what it thinks and what we feel makes this place special. Our water, our environment, and our long-term quality of life. The decision that you guys are making isn't just about one development proposal. This is about whether or not we're going to continue to honor that responsibility. And you said you wanted facts, so I'm going to lay out what are some facts about this. The proposed location at 3383 sits up gradient from the well field. In plain terms, the water is flowing from there to the well field. It's just to bring it down to my understanding. Some of the previous speakers did a fabulous job with a lot more technical terms than I can. But that fact alone should bring pause. When we talk about risk, we talk about our groundwater protection, we talk about our kids, direction matters. If we've got water flowing, if you're concerned about the gas tank or if you're concerned about the car wash, when we've got water flowing into a well field, that should be enough to honestly deep six this whole idea. Yes. It moves slowly, it's going to move silently, and that well serves thousands and thousands of people. There's really, that's not in any kind of dispute. Another fact, we don't have to speculate about what's going to happen. 100% of man-made containers fail. We have not made a container that will even hold nuclear waste. So I don't know why we think that we've suddenly now are smart enough that we're going to contain this, because it's just a matter of time. Stevens Point already has multiple former gas stations piled all over our town that the tanks failed, and they're no longer in use. We know this is the trajectory. The only difference between 1977 and 2026 is that we think we're smarter than the people in 1977, but they thought they were smart too. Kwik Trip, on their own, I respect them a ton as an operator, and I want to acknowledge that, but even the best operators cannot eliminate risk. They can only manage it. Underground fuel storage, by its nature, carries long-term uncertainty. Tanks outlive business cycles. The companies can change, oversight fades, and groundwater will always remember that. This is especially important in a community like Stevens Point. We're an environmentally aware city that has repeatedly said water is a non-negotiable. Our clean water is non-negotiable. Our municipal wells are not going to be easily replaced. Once compromised, that damage is not going to be measured to be in months. It's going to be measured in generations and decades. Another fact, it's also worth noting, this proposal does not meet any unmet community need. There are already 3 Kwik Trip gas stations within 3 miles of this site. And that is not as the crow flies, that is to drive there. If you're driving and you have less than 3 miles of gas in your tank, you have failed. Okay?
I've been there.
In addition, there are also 3 more gas stations that are not Kwik Trip within 2 miles of that site. This is not about access to fuel or groceries. It's adding a redundancy in a location where the environmental risk is unique and the public benefit at best is marginal. Planning is about choosing the right places for development, not just approving development because it meets minimal technical standards. Some locations are simply wrong for certain uses. A site that drains directly toward a well field is one of them. I urge the community to take a long view, to ask not just can this be permitted, but should it be? Future residents will never know about the discussions we had here tonight, but they will live with the consequences from the decisions that are made. Protecting our drinking water is not anti-business, it's pro-community, pro-health, and pro-future. A few more facts for you. Gas contamination of our water is going to be detrimental. There is, you said yourself, that you have the policy of no harm and no impact. These tanks have inherent risk. If there's no harm and no impact in what you're doing, why do you need 30 conditions to try to make it right? You're trying to address the fact that there is risk and there is harm. For those reasons, I respectfully request that you deny approval of this proposal and keep this use away from our well field. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
Hi. I did bring research. This is going to go, I don't want it handed out. This can just go on the record.
Okay.
Just to show that I did do my homework. Yes, my name is Donna Mott. I live at 5324 Forest Circle North. I live on that borderline. Sorry. I hold a bachelor degree of science in nursing, and I had a chemotherapy certification. So what I'm going to talk to you about is benzene, that clear, odorless gas. According to the CDC, we all know that it's considered a human carcinogen, and there is no safe level of benzene exposure. I found multiple studies on benzene and gasoline, and what it does to us. I'm going to share only two, because that's what I thought I only had 3 minutes. So, the first study was published in 2019, so it's not old. It measured benzene emissions from gas stations' storage tank vent pipes. Researchers directly measured emissions and then used EPA dispersion modeling to determine how far that benzene traveled in the air. The study found that the emissions occurred daily and were 14% higher than the standard. So you're wondering, well, we have those fancy little gadgets and all those stage 1 and stage 2 vapor recovery systems and those pressure valve that should prevent all this. Sorry, these stations had those features. I told my husband, it reminds me of when I go to buy a car and they tell me that you're going to get 50 miles per gallon with this car. And I bring it home and I'm lucky I get 28 to 30. These valves do not work. They are releasing benzene into the air. The second, the dispersion model. So we have our field of up to 300 feet. That's supposed to be the safe zone. These dispersion models, they showed that they went as far as 500 feet. 500 feet. This is important in planning context. In 2015, Montgomery County increased their minimum separation distance between gas stations and the sensitive land uses from 300 feet to 500 feet and expanded the sensitive land uses to include dwelling units. This change reflects recognition that earlier setbacks did not adequately protect residential areas. The World Health Organization further notes that indoor benzene concentrations are higher than outdoor concentrations, and that living near gas stations increases that exposure. They specifically advise against children playing near gas stations. Is that the 300 mark, the 500 mark, or is it even further? Reinforcing that land use incompatibility concerns. The second study was an eye-opener for me. It examined childhood leukemia and relationships to proximity to gas stations. Researchers found a clear association between living near a gas station and increased leukemia risk. This risk doubled for children under 5 and increased 4-fold for children over the age of 5, with elevated risk persisting up to, get this, 800 meters. 800 meters. That's a half a mile. They're finding kids with leukemia a half a mile from the gas station source. Here's my map of what that would mean. I hate to tell you, but if you live in Forest Circle, you're going to be in trouble. All of Village Green is encompassed in this map. I can leave this for you too. Under your conditional use standards, the application bears the burden of proof. The first standard requires that the use not be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare. I don't know how you can get around that. While the applicant has agreed to water testing, that does not address air exposure, which is a pathway for benzene risk. Conditional use approval exists precisely to address uses that may require additional safeguards. We are requesting a reasonable, enforceable condition that the applicant fund independent, third-party benzene air testing in nearby homes twice a year with required remediation if levels should increase. This is a mitigation measure directly tied to documented risk and consistent with the purpose of a conditional use review. We respectfully ask that the Planning Commission to ensure that the public health protection is demonstrably met before approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open. We'll do everybody in person first, and then we'll move to online.
All right. My name is John Mott. Good evening. I live near the proposed site at 5324 Forest Circle. I'd like to speak about noise and operational impacts, particularly as they relate to a gas station and car wash located immediately next to family homes. Noise is not subjective when it comes to land use planning. The World Health Organization has found that chronic exposure to nighttime noise, even at relatively moderate levels, can lead to sleep disturbance, cardiovascular stress, and reduced quality of life, especially for children and seniors. Car washes are a known source of recurring mechanical noise, blowers and dryers, pumps and vehicle movement. Gas stations add additional noise from deliveries, trash collection, idling vehicles, and late night activity. And the dryers at the car wash average 110 to between 100 and 110 decibels, and sounds over 80 decibels can damage hearing. Stevens Point's zoning ordinance explicitly states that conditional uses must not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of nearby property and must protect public health and welfare. Noise is a central part of that standard. That is why we are requesting the following conditions: that the car wash operations limited to no later than 9 p.m., consistent with other Kwik Trip locations in the city. Deliveries, trash pickup, and maintenance limited to daytime hours only. No outdoor amplified audio at any time. Car wash doors required to remain closed during operation. Dryer exhaust and car wash exits oriented away from residential homes. Importantly, we are also requesting that any future requests to extend hours or modify operations return to both the Plan Commission and Common Council for approval. Once the conditional use is approved without firm operational limits, it becomes extremely difficult for the city or residents to address problems later. This concern was raised by the Plan Commission itself during the rezone discussions. These conditions are not anti-business, they are predictable, reasonable safeguards that help ensure commercial use can coexist with the residential neighborhood without causing ongoing harm. Good planning anticipates impacts before they happen. We ask that you do the same here. And thank you for your time and consideration on this.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Public hearing remains open.
Hello. I have a hand. We really did want to come with the substantial evidence. Many of us were working until about 3-4 hours ago on pulling stuff together with receiving the notice in the mail 5 days ago. So I am Savannah Hebier, 5272 Forest Circle South. I would like to speak specifically about landscaping and vegetative buffers, because in this case, they are not cosmetic. They are a critical mitigation tool. Vegetative buffers serve real, measurable functions in land use planning. When properly designed, they reduce noise, limit light spill, capture airborne pollutants, and slow and filter stormwater runoff, all of which directly support public health and groundwater protection, and all of which talks about a lot of what we've already covered today. Planning and environmental guidance consistently shows that wide, layered buffers are far more effective than narrow planting or fencing alone. A meaningful buffer includes canopy trees, dense mid-story shrubs, and native ground cover, working together year-round, not just in the summer. In this location, the buffer is especially important because it sits between high-intensity commercial activity and existing homes, and within an area sensitive to groundwater impact. Wellhead protection principles at both the municipal and county level emphasize land use controls that reduce runoff velocity, promote infiltration, and limit pollutant transport, all functions that vegetative buffers directly support. It's also important to recognize context in this situation. There was previously a natural vegetative buffer on this property that helped separate the neighborhood from surrounding uses. That buffer was clear-cut recently, removing an existing layer of protection. As a result, it is now especially important that any approval require a replacement buffer that is intentional, dense, and permanent, rather than minimal or purely decorative. For these reasons, we are requesting a minimum 50-foot vegetative buffer designed as functional environmental infrastructure with layered plantings, long-term maintenance requirements, and protection from future reduction. On the topic of the future, I'd also like to speak specifically about future phases and scope creep, because this is an issue the Plan Commission itself raised during earlier discussions. During the rezoning process, multiple commissioners acknowledged an important reality. Once land is zoned commercial and a conditional use is approved, it becomes very difficult to claw back restrictions later, even when impacts turn out to be greater than anticipated. That concern is not theoretical. Conditional use permits often become the baseline against which future requests are evaluated. Over time, small changes, additional buildings, expanded hours, increased traffic, brighter lighting, more intensive uses can be approved incrementally. Each change may seem modest on its own, but the cumulative impact can be substantial, particularly for adjacent neighborhoods. That is why clarity at the front end matters. We are asking the Commission to ensure that any approval is narrow, specific, and limited to what is being proposed today, not what might be proposed in the future. Specifically, we're requesting that the conditional use permit apply only to the currently identified lots and uses as shown on page 6 of the conditional use permit staff report. No approval be applied for future phases, tenants, or expansions, and any future phase or increase in intensity returned to the Plan Commission and Common Council for full review. These conditions do not prevent development. They protect the city's ability to make informed decisions as conditions change. Once authority is given away, it is very hard to reclaim. The Commission recognized that risk during the rezoning discussion, and we ask that you apply that same caution here. Thoughtful limits today preserve flexibility tomorrow for the city, for future commissioners, and for the neighborhoods that live with these decisions long after tonight. We're not asking you to stop development, though we'd like to. We're asking you to guide it carefully, using the tools that you have while you still have them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
Michael Corrigan, 3271 Tulip Lane. Kwik Trip, we love you. Absolutely love you. You are clean, you're efficient, your prices are moderately priced. That's where I'm going. But there's nowhere in this town where you're putting a gas station backing up to a neighborhood. There's nowhere in this town that a gas station's backing up to a neighborhood. We've already allowed the developer to get his zoning B4, which he can do what he wants under zoning conditions. And he do so. But having a 24/7 business in the backyard of a residential area, no. 24/7. People coming, going, honking, locking their doors, beep, beep, all night long. Running through the gas station, running through the car wash, somebody in their backyard's trying to have a peaceful moment. There's an 80 to 100 decibel car going through their car wash, excuse me. City of Stevens Point, city of wonderful water. Well, we got it. So what, we're not concerned about Whiting's water? That's not being a very good neighbor. You know, if John's light is shining in my backyard, I usually go over and say, hey, John, have a conversation. Could you redirect your light because it's shining into my bedroom window? Or turn it off at a certain time? You'll say, yeah. This particular parcel of property was protecting our neighborhood from air pollution, noise pollution, and anything else when we had a buffer of trees there. Now the developer come in there and he can do what he wants, but he decided to come in there and clear cut everything. Well, now guess what we have now? We have way more noise pollution in our neighborhood because we hear everything that's going on from HH and Hoover because of our prevailing southwest or southeast winds. It all comes into our neighborhood. We've already got dust problem. And well, we got people that are suffering from allergies because of the fact. Now we got snow on the ground, but you're not getting so much. But boy, I'll tell you, in the fall, people are choking. And it's definitely a change in our environmental neighborhood. Our air quality has decreased considerably. Your conditional use of item 21, it's too late. Once that happens, it's too late. I'm sorry, fellas, but water is really a source that you can't replenish once you have polluted it. Mayor Weezer himself said, once you pee in the pool, you can't unpee. Same thing goes with gasoline contaminating wellheads. That's about all I said, but I would like the commission to turn this item number 3 and item number 4 down. It does not belong in the neighborhood. We've already allowed retail space to come in there. Gas station, no. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open. Anybody in the overflow room, feel free to come on in as well.
Hi. My name is Amberly Schwartz, 1336 Birchwood Lane, Stevens Point, Wisconsin, town of Linwood. I am the County Board Supervisor for District 19. Now, this is not within my district, or it would be a county issue, but directly across the street from this, there are 8 parcels, 4 of which have private well water. And I want you to consider that when you look at these conditions. Based on what I've heard, and I'm sorry I was late, I was at a town meeting, but I've only heard the last about half hour, and there are some very good recommendations here. And I just ask you if you think the conditions that staff have put up are enough to protect your citizens. I would recommend keeping all of these conditions and then some if you do move forward with this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Amberly, I hope you were late enough where you didn't hear my comment about how much cooler the city is than the county board.
Well, you didn't have to repeat it.
I never said that, no. Thanks. Public hearing is still open. Anyone in the overflow room wishing to speak? Come on in as well, please.
Good evening. Eric Renfort, 3349 Orchid Lane. I'll keep it short and sweet because we've hit a lot of these already. Would you mind zooming in on 21 and 22, please? Tried to get with city staff earlier today to discuss these. Just a couple of minor edits. I'm a structural engineer by training, but my senior design classes were in drinking water treatment plant design and wastewater treatment plant design, so I do know a little bit about this stuff. 21, I love the intention behind it, but I'm worried that no risk, no impact is not going to be legally enforceable. Think that maybe we need to hone that towards half of the EPA or DNR MCLs or something quantifiable that we can actually enforce. 22, would love to see that not be self-policing. Later on, it talks about a groundwater professional mutually agreed upon to help with making sure that the right actions are taken once a risk is quantified and identified and laid out. I'd love to see that professional involved in actually checking out the problem, because right now we're seeing the owner must conduct a delineation to determine the degree and extent and whether remediation is necessary. So, again, Kwik Trip, love you, but that doesn't mean that Kwik Trip's always going to be the operator here. It could be someone else down the line who might just go, oh, well, we've determined there's no remediation necessary, and that's not really what we want 22 to say. I understand that 21 would still kind of cover us, but let's say what we mean. Would you mind jumping up 3 slides?
Up 3 slides.
Up to the map.
3, that one?
Yep. I'm sorry, zooming out. We should have practiced this before.
Yeah, right.
The last, 2 points that I've got here. I don't understand the order that this is occurring in. The staff report and the conditional use permits all pertain to future imaginary lot 1. That doesn't exist yet. This is a request to give conditional use to 17 acres. And there's not really a great way to tie these permits to lot 1. They are currently being requested to be tied to those 2 very large parcels. In my opinion, it seems that it might behoove us to table this issue until it's replatted and then revisit, or to adjust the staff report to include the impact of all of this getting that conditional use, because right now, the staff report states that there's not any sort of compatibility issue because Lot 1 is abutted on 3 sides by more commercial property, and then on the 4th side by HH. That's true, but that's not what the request is for. The conditional use permit is for 17 acres, not quite our full 18, but 17 acres here. Parting thought, not going to help us on this go around, but for future, a lot of municipalities have started to enact legislation around bonds, like the construction industry. When you're doing something unsafe or risky, you require a bond against performance or against whatever potential issues you might cause. Poisoning that well is expensive, and end of life for those tanks is expensive. So again, not going to help us today, but something to consider for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open. Anyone in person wishing to speak?
Harold Wolfgram. I'm an attorney over in Marshfield. I represent Stevens Point, Wisconsin LLC, the developer, Victor Baton. And I just wanted to talk, there's been a lot of discussion tonight that various environmental concerns, and obviously you have the staff report in front of you. And what I wanted to point out is you've got, when you talk about a handout, you've got a handout that dealt with those conditions that have been proposed. There's been some other, obviously, alternate conditions that have been proposed, but it seems like everybody sort of understands that you're really dealing with a question of land use, right to develop land, and that the real question is what conditions are necessary to allow that to develop under the code that you have. There's been a lot of discussions about different issues in terms of the environment, and those are valid. The only problem is that you're stuck with the law that you have. I know that there's been the concern about the Whiting wellhead, and unfortunately, you're not in a position to enforce their wellhead and still be in compliance with your code regarding the protection of the wellhead. Your staff report addresses those issues in terms of what your obligation is in regard to that. So you get to the conditional use permit, and that's where I think that the report itself outlines the statutory and act that's involved here, which means that you can look at these conditions, but in order to find that those conditions that have been outlined are not adequate, you'd have to find substantial evidence that they don't address the issues that you'd be concerned for in regard to this. And the one thing I'd like to point out in terms of some of the discussion that's been here tonight is that a lot of those deal specifically with the environmental concerns, air quality. You have pollution, noise, and what's often missed when you're sitting here, and obviously people who are looking at living next to something, whatever that may be, or development that's adjacent to them, they look at that from their perspective. On the other hand, at the same time, you have regulations in place that deal with air pollution, that deal with noise pollution. They're part of your ordinance. They're part of state regulations, and many of those things that have been discussed here tonight are regulated outside of your zoning code and permits that are requested as part of a conditional use permit. And so that's hard to sort of delineate when you get that question about what is substantial evidence. And I think that's where you have to look at what you have in front of you is a situation where this has been vetted. Staff has proposed to you and recommended that these conditions will be met or have been agreed to be met by the applicant. And you'd have to find and be able to point to substantial evidence that staff's wrong in that regard in order to comply with the requirement for issuing a conditional use permit. So I just wanted to point that out. I think a lot gets confused when we talk about environmental concerns, and I think they're valid. PFAS, every municipality, I do a lot of municipality work. I'm city attorney for multiple municipalities, and we're dealing with that all the time. But one of the problems when you start looking at zoning issues is that you look at a particular place or location and you try to think about what are our concerns in that regard. But you always have to remember that when you're doing that, how does that compare to everything else that's happening? And what I mean by that is what's around that. PFAS is the best example you can think of. Our problem with PFAS is typically not what's going on right in the location where these things are highly regulated, but because we have ground contamination occurring from farm uses and land uses that are often not regulated to the same extent. And so another example of that, which you would deal with as a municipality, is the idea that somebody comes in and they want to bring in, for example, a community-based residential facility, and we start looking at, it's in the community, it's surrounded by residences. How is that going to impact us? And what's missed is so often you can't differentiate between some of those uses and the average use that anybody in a residence might have. If you have 2 or 3 teenagers, you've got traffic, you've got cars parked around, and that's the same thing when we start talking about what ifs, right? What if something gets spilled? But we have that risk in almost any use, somebody doing mechanic work in their driveway, which is absolutely illegal. We have regulations to address it, but could it contaminate the groundwater? Absolutely. And it wouldn't take that much of a spill. I think everybody agrees with that, but we have ways that that's regulated, and to start treating somebody else's right to use their property based on the what ifs, that starts to treat them differently. So again, I think you've got a packet in front of you, and it's very comprehensive here tonight, and that's what you have to consider in comparison to all the other statements that have been made. Thank you. My address is 114 West 5th Street in Marshfield. Thank you.
Joe Donahue, 3395 Howard Avenue, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I believe our resident Deanne Donahue mentioned that Kwik Trip has had multiple leaks in Stevens Point area. I was unaware of it. I think a lot of the residents are. I'm not a scientist, but I think that is pollution, right? I don't know what the city of Stevens Point is doing about it, but I do know that the residents care about pollution. That's what we've been talking about for 2 hours tonight. And I, wholeheartedly support their concerns. I want to live in a clean city. Everybody likes Kwik Trip. You like I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I've heard people say they like the roller dogs. That's great, but groundwater is far more important than roller dogs and a little bit of convenience. So thanks for your consideration. I appreciate all your support.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
Looks like it's my turn.
That's Midwest nice. That's what they call that.
There you go.
Lynn.
Yeah. Happy for each of you. My name is Lynn Markham. I live at 302 Georgia Street North in Stevens Point. You're supposed to base your decision on substantial evidence, so we're doing our best to provide substantial evidence. Leads to a lot of paper. If you have another method, I agree. It would be good if everybody in the room could see these. I did bring extra copies of my main handout, so you can hand those around if you want. I see. If the city is open to, we provide you with electronic files so we can show it to everybody up here, I'd be happy to do that in the future. I think that would be great so that everybody can see it, including those people online.
That would all help.
Okay. I'm going to talk about purposes, but I want to follow up on what was said about substantial evidence. Multiple people have defined it as it's defined in statute as facts and information. In the staff report, it says, and this comes from statute, the handout 6223-7DE, if an applicant for a conditional use permit meets or agrees to meet all the requirements and conditions specified in the city ordinance or those imposed by the city shall grant the conditional use permit. The statutes say that. The statutes also say something else that wasn't included in the staff report. Under 6223(7)(DE)(2)(B, the statutes say the applicant must demonstrate that the application and all the requirements and conditions established by the city relating to the conditional use are or shall be satisfied, both of which must be supported by substantial evidence. So the applicant needs to provide substantial evidence that they meet the 14 conditional use standards listed in the city ordinance. They need to provide that evidence. I appreciate staff reports to this commission as well as to the zoning board that I sit on. However, the staff report is only a recommendation. Staff doesn't decide on conditional uses. The Plan Commission makes the first decision, and the Common Council makes the final decision on conditional uses according to the city ordinance. So tonight, it is the Plan Commission that decides whether Kwik Trip has provided substantial evidence to meet the standards from the city ordinance. I'll back up a little bit. We've talked about the purpose of City of Stevens Point Groundwater Protection District to protect municipal water supplies for Whiting as well as Stevens Point and to promote the public health. When we looked at Whiting, they list gas stations as prohibited in this area, in Zone B. We've recognized they don't have legal authority, so it depends on the city and what they decide as to what happens to the Whiting well. I want to provide a little bit of information that I found when I looked on the Wisconsin Bureau for Remediation and Redevelopment Tracking System, this BERT system that's on a statewide basis. Deanne talked about a couple of specific situations and what had happened at QuickSite locations. Mine is a broader view. I simply did some searches. You can search for leaking underground storage tanks there. So I searched that and the name Kwik Trip. And it found 269 sites with leaking underground storage tanks. Not all of them are still leaking now. Many of them are closed, but there have been 269 Kwik Trip sites that have had leaking underground storage tanks. Then I did a search for leaking underground storage tanks and Kwik Trip, and one of the options you can choose is, has that Lust, leaking underground storage tank, affected another property? Has the gasoline or whatever contaminant gone to another property? And for that search, there were 26 sites, and I've provided the evidence for that, for those searches. Okay, so back to the Plan Commission decides whether Kwik Trip has provided substantial evidence. Obviously, the first standard is that the gas station will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health. So, some of the questions related to that. Do the double-walled pipes and tanks with a monitoring system that Kwik Trip is proposing, does that demonstrate that the gas station will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health? It's a physical structure, but will it accomplish what that standard requires? Has Kwik Trip provided evidence that these systems do not leak? In their application, Kwik Trip has not provided a groundwater protection plan or a spill response plan describing what they'll do if gasoline leaks or if spills happen off the pavement. has Kwik Trip provided substantial evidence that they will prevent benzene from getting into the municipal wells that over 1,600 people in Village of Whiting drink from, and is also the backup source for Village of Plover. Okay, human health depends on whether drinking water is safe to drink or whether it's contaminated. Like you've heard before, gasoline as well as diesel contain benzene, which is a known human carcinogen. I provided the EPA document on that. It causes cancer in people. It also describes the non-cancer health effects of benzene. I provided a history of benzene that says benzene-induced cancer was first reported in the late 1920s. When you or your spouse or child is diagnosed with cancer, many people are sympathetic because they know it best. It will be a long road of treatment and suffering, and the person diagnosed with cancer may die. Having people say they're so sorry about this cancer diagnosis doesn't really help. What helps is taking action to prevent cancer. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Public hearing remains open.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Scott Tigan. I'm a vice president with Kwik Trip stores. I'm not going to take up too much time. I just want to let you all know, let everybody know, Kwik Trip takes our responsibilities with environmental and being a good neighbor very seriously. I want to introduce, we got Kevin Nestigan in our environmental department, along with Dave Powell, also here. They can address more of the environmental stuff than I can. Just addressing a few of the issues. Our car wash dryers in this particular store are facing south, away from the neighbors. The plat that you see there, with us being on Lot 1, we will not be adjacent to the neighbors. We're shielded with Lot 3 and whatever Victor puts on those lots. We agree with the limited car wash hours that Adam has in the report. There are a couple benefits to the store. I just want to point this out. Last year in Stevens Point, we paid $136,000 in real estate taxes. This particular project will probably pay somewhere in the $40,000 a year range of real estate taxes. This will also bring 40 to 45 new jobs. 55% will be part-time, 45% full-time, but roughly $1.5 to $2 million of payroll and benefits. I'd like Kevin to address some of the issues that have been brought up here tonight, and we greatly appreciate all your time, and we appreciate all the concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Like Scott mentioned, my name is Kevin Nestigan. I'm the environmental manager with Kwik Trip. I've been in the environmental department at Kwik Trip for 9 years. Prior to that, I did environmental consulting for 10 years. So I got a background in environmental consulting and remediation investigation work. We do understand the concern of the wellhead in the area. And I will say the conditions that the city has laid out are I'd say the most stringent conditions of all of our 900 plus stores. So the city has done a great job at vetting out and applying those safeguards in place for the wellhead, specifically in regards to the double wall containment of all the the fuel-containing items. What that means is any place that there could be a spill or a release, there is a secondary containment, a secondary measure to capture that spill before it can make it to the environment. The first being where a guest is filling up their pump. Some people have made mention about the BERT site having spills being documented. They're on there because Kwik Trip does the right thing, and we do report spills from customers to the DNR like we're supposed to, so they get logged on the BERT's website. If they do get spilled, we have a 24/7 operations support center that takes the call from our store. They then call our 24/7 spill response vendor that goes out and cleans up the spill on the pavement. If it were to happen to get off the pavement and into a storm sewer, this site in particular, like all our other newer Kwik Trips, the stormwater structure that's nearest where the fuel would flow into has an oil water separator in that stormwater structure. I say oil water separator, that's more like product, like fuel, gas, diesel. So if it were to go into that stormwater structure, it is lighter than the water that's also present in there. So it cannot leave that stormwater structure because it's floating in there. So our spill response vendor is able to go and capture and remove any spill product from that stormwater structure. If it were to happen to get past that, our site has stormwater detention ponds, which is clay lined, so if contamination goes into there, it can't infiltrate into the groundwater. It's clay lined and can be recovered there. Another location where spills could potentially happen is for the fuel tanks. Like it's been mentioned several times, they are double-walled fuel tanks, and that space in between is called the interstitial space. So you have your primary fuel tank, that's what holds the fuel, the gas or diesel. Then you have a secondary containment, outer shell. So if that primary fuel tank were happen to have a crack or a leak or a failure, it would be captured by that secondary containment. And within that secondary containment is a riser pipe with a sensor that immediately sounds to our call center, and it's responded to see if there's fuel that's leaked, and then it can be immediately shut down and responded to before it would have the chance to leave that outer shell. Another potential place for spills or releases is from the fuel piping, from the tanks to the pump itself. Those are also double-walled double-wall pipes, and they're solid pipes. They're not connected like the old-school method, which they had fiberglass pipes that were connected by joints, not double-walled. Potential for releases on those leaks that would go undetected. These are double-walled fuel pipes that are solid pipes from the tank to the gas pump, and there's sensors within there, and Dave Paul is our fuel manager. He knows more details on that too. Is it electronic line leak detection, where if there's a loss of pressure in those pipes, it can sense that there is potential for a leak, and it'll shut it down, and then it'll get further investigated, looked into, prior to it having the chance to leave that outer wall, the secondary shell of the fuel piping. And another thing, people brought up the groundwater contamination. Within the conditions are the groundwater monitoring wells that the city has as a condition that would be installed. Within all 900 plus Kwik Trip stores, the only stores that have that restriction, that have wells proactively, are in Stevens Point in this wellhead area. So just so you're aware, that is above and beyond what's typically required, and we've agreed upon doing that to ensure protection of the wellhead. So, can you think of anything more, Scott, to touch on? Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open. Anyone in person, and then we're going to go to the online attendees.
Kevin Lutz, 504 Autumn Court, Village Avoiding Trustee and Utility Committee Chair. A lot of things I was going to cover have already been covered, But I will also like to remind you that County Planning and Zoning has sent you a letter against this gas station project, and I do believe currently the County Planning and Zoning is coming up with even more restrictive wellhead protection ordinances, which the cities and the counties are verbatim right now. Curious about we're going to be taken care of, like sand whiting is a question now for later. So, gas gets in our wells, pumps through our system. Kwik Trip going to clean that up? They're going to infiltrate our whole system and clean it? Because the developer approached us first and asked us to do a professional review and design feedback study with a review fee of $20,000. That doesn't sound like a good neighbor. That sounds like you're getting the community to pay for your gas station. So I'm not real excited about that. And it sounds like we don't really even have all the details yet, Mr. Lemke, about how the containment's going to work. How can you get a conditional use if you don't even know how it's going to be contained? Or is it the 17 acres for the conditional use, or is it lot 1? Doesn't sound like we have the answers for that as well. And one of the other things I like to say is, we talked about peeing in somebody else's pool. This is our O&M from December. We supplied Stevens Point residents water because Stevens Point had a break, a water main break. So you're peeing in your own pool. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Public hearing is still open? Well, just for the record, peeing in any pool is bad.
I agree. I'm Nancy Eggleston, 2410 Enterprise Court in Plover. I just want to agree with, starting with Chris Mechanic and then all of the neighbors and everybody else who's given testimony here. I don't feel that there's another need for the gas station, and from a health standpoint, from a groundwater standpoint, from a taxpayer standpoint, if there is going to be contamination, either in our drinking water or else even when we have to do the water treatment, if we're going to be having more PFAS, anything else going into that system, it's going to come back to the taxpayers too. So I agree with the folks that have spoken earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's let everyone go first, and then we'll get back to the second round. Sir? Thank you. Anyone else in person wishing to speak for the first time? The public hearing that's still open.
Hello, I'm Dale Steinmetz, Alder for District 6, where this parcel of land is located, and I want to speak in support of the conditional use permits here tonight. I understand some of my neighbors have concerns. Change in a neighborhood always brings questions, but the conditional use permit process is carefully regulated. Site plan review, building codes, site-specific conditions, and city oversight are designed to protect stakeholders every step of the way. The applicants have worked with our city staff, followed our process, met our standards, and earned the confidence of city staff. These conditional use permits will move the property toward the highest and best use of the land while ensuring it's done right. Approval means growth, ongoing economic opportunity, maintaining our city's reputation as fair and predictable partners, and tax revenue that will support streets, public safety, parks, and more. Denial means developers could take their investment elsewhere, and Stevens Point may well lose that growth to communities who will say yes. I know planning decisions require balance, but when a project follows the rules, fits our comprehensive plan, and offers real benefit to our residents and tax base, turning it away sends the wrong signal. We can be thoughtful and open to responsible growth. To quote from the last paragraph of the administrative report prepared by Planner Kuhn and our Community Development Department, quote, based on the spirit of Act 67, it is my professional opinion that any arguments claiming a gas station is an inappropriate land use for the subject area due to its proximity to a municipal well is unsound. The city adopted their groundwater protection ordinance in 2022, and by that legislative act, it was determined that gas stations would be an acceptable land use within the subject area, provided that it accomplishes standards outlined in the city's zoning code. The proposed gas station, it's a long quote. The proposed gas station land use meets all standards identified in the city's zoning code, provided that the above conditions are implemented. Therefore, it would be my recommendation to approve the enclosed request to achieve statutory compliance." Unquote. I urge support of city staff and approval of the conditional use permits. Let's grow our community in a way that's reasonable and welcoming. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open.
Elizabeth Trebatuski, 3262 Sunflower Road. First off, I would like to agree with everything that my neighbors and people who have spoken here have said, like, really well done, well researched. There's a burden of proof here, and it's not on us. It's on Kwik Trip. There are a lot of points of failure that have been pointed out. Is $40,000 in extra taxes enough to justify that? And on a personal note, I grew up at the corner of Green Avenue and Main Street, near the gas station that is currently closed. The number of people in my neighborhood that had cancer have died from cancer, including my mother, who died 2 days before Christmas of cancer, is ridiculous. And that gas station's closed now, but the damage it did is still being felt by people in our community, and it will be felt forever. That damage is there. That damage can't be undone. The choices need to be made now to prevent that danger from happening to other people and for other families to suffer losses from things like cancer. That can be prevented. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open for the first time. Anyone here in public, in person rather, wishing to speak? If not, I'm going to move to our online attendees. Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you. Justin Frame, Senior Vice President with JSD Professional Services. We are the civil engineer, surveyor, landscape architect, and planner on this project. I want to address just a couple of items that have been voiced this evening for statements of clarification and statement of fact. Question came up on the traffic impact analysis, I believe, Commissioner Rice. I want to note that third-party consultant traffic analysis and design, TADDY, had prepared, we had worked with the ownership group to prepare a full traffic impact analysis. It was a multi-step process. It included a preliminary report and a final report in conjunction with the City of Stevens Point, Portage County, and the State Department of Transportation. That was reviewed at multiple intervals between 2024 and 2025. It was conditionally approved by those agencies and stakeholders. It looked at discussion points of traffic distribution, level of service, warrant analysis, based on the land use plan that was in the rezone analysis. It looked at land uses both proposed and of potential. So the reason why I say that is from a commercial standpoint, items of high use, say grocery versus multifamily residential, looked at the traffic distribution and the increased traffic volumes of those sort of highest and best uses as a very conservative measure. Also, the regional extended network was reviewed relative to the neighborhood and Iris Lane. Iris Lane was a key component of whether the potential closure of that or cut through the neighborhood. Queuing and level of service at Iris Lane relative to the intersection of Hoover and McDill was reviewed. And that, like I said, was reviewed by all agencies at each one of those intervals. So that is current. I believe that can be reviewed online and is of public record. I also want to note the traffic considerations relative to pedestrian safety. I think this is an important point. We had worked directly with city staff and DPW relative to adding sidewalks on both sides of the public improvement, adding public connections to the proposed Lot 1 Kwik Trip site plan, as well as a easement along County Highway HH for a multi-use trail that the developer has agreed to implement as part of the project as well as a connection for future access to the east, a reservation of land for a connection. Now, we can't control everything that happens off-site, but on-site, we have multiple pathways and pedestrian connections as part of both the TIA, the site plan, and in coordination with staff. So I just want to note that. A lighting plan has been provided. I think there was a comment that was brought up this evening that has been reviewed in relative to the ordinance, and those details can be provided. I won't touch on those. Landscape plan has been provided, and I just want to note the vegetative buffer areas. I know the applicant, the ownership, has worked directly with neighborhood and review of fencing relative to the separation. I will note that with this site being not directly adjacent to single-family residential, obviously the zoning ordinance controls the adjacency of land use and any future Lot 3 development and the screening and buffering requirements that will be required of those future developments. I want to note, and we also have additional JSD stormwater management engineers. The plans that have been submitted are in conformance with all state regulation relative to the Department of Natural Resources. We're not asking for exceptions relative to NR 151 and 216, which is a water resources code at the state of Wisconsin. And as well as we'll note that the city of Stevens Point stormwater ordinance is above and beyond a standard threshold, has higher regulations as it relates to stay-on volumes, runoff rate control that have been met and will be conditions of approval to be met without exceptions. The last item I want to note, a certified survey map has been submitted that is not on the agenda this evening. That will be reviewed by staff. That designates and describes via legal description Lot 1 of the lands relative to this proposal. I will allow Director Kuhn to relay the timing, but obviously the ownership and the applicant understands that that would be a condition of approval to have the certified survey map instrument recorded as a condition of approval and prior to building permits being issued. So I just want to note that the Lot 1 lands is relative to this request. Available for any other questions. We appreciate your time and review this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open. Anyone wishing to speak for the first time in person? Thanks for coming, Kevin.
All right. As many of you guys know me, I'm Victor Baden, Source Commercial Real Estate. I own the property for almost 3 years now. Environmental concerns, obviously, we are focusing that nothing will happen on this site. We obviously can't control everything that'll happen, but I feel like you're coming at us like guilty till proven innocent. It's innocent till proven guilty. That's just my perspective of all this. I want to just share, because it's not me getting this out to the public, but I've owned this property for 3 years. I've been working on it for 5 years. The calls that I got before Kwik Trip got out of the bag, cat's out of the bag, wasn't me. It's not out there publicly. But when we went through this in August, it got out there. And the calls that I got before this for this property were mobile home parks, self-storage, distribution centers, uses that would devalue and not be a great eyesight for coming into the city of Stevens Point. Since Kwik Trip's been somewhat verbally announced, not by me, by the community and through the word, I've gotten calls from financial institutions, daycares that would abut the single-family homes, multifamily developers, a surgery laser center, a wealth management company, and other retail and restaurant uses. Kwik Trip's going to drive other great uses to come to here and improve the values in this corridor of Stevens Point. And I think everybody else has handled the rest of it. I appreciate you guys being attentive to this. This is the time to voice everything up, and I appreciate you hearing me out. So,
thank you. Public hearing is still open.
Chris Tiffany, 4808 Nicolay Avenue. I live 2 blocks up the way, right on the corner. I just wanted to note, a lot of good conversation here tonight, but a couple things. I only count 3 gas stations in the city without residential abutting up to it. Almost every single one does have residential property abutting to it. This one actually would not. And as far as any other, at the end of the day, this committee is not making the decision to approve a gas station based on need, but as a resident in the area, it actually would be very nice. There's no grocery, anything like that, except for all the way to Walmart. There's no other convenience stores, anything like that. So I would be a personal user of it. The eventual commercial development on that corner is inevitable. When I bought my house 4 or 5 years ago, it was inevitable at some point that lot would be developed. We've got an industrial park right up the way there with heavy traffic. The other thing that I guess I would call out, and I keep in mind, is the amount of potential for environmental damage from multifamily, residential, people working on vehicles in their lots. I can spill 10 gallons of gasoline in my driveway and there's no reporting, there's nothing that'll happen, there's no retaining ponds, there's nothing like that, where in a gas station environment like this, there's a lot of restrictions put in place that actually protects the groundwater more than if we have 100 cars parked on that lot every single day. That could have oil leaks, gas leaks, things like that. There's nothing protecting our groundwater from those 100 vehicles having leaks where this does. So I just want to notate, obviously at the end of the day, this committee isn't really approving Kwik Trip as a business, because that's not what they do. It's about whether or not they met the requirements. And I just want to say, as a resident there, I support Kwik Trip, so, and the approval on this case. So thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open in person. All right, I'm going to go to online. Anyone online wishing to testify? You can unmute yourself or raise your hand, a virtual hand. Anyone online?
Hi, this is BJ Hermson, 5295 Rose Pass. I think my concerns, a lot of them have been stated. My main concern is that the conditional use permit, at least with the paperwork, covers the not re-divided properties. And my, trepidation there is the fact that I feel like this whole process, we've had bait and switch throughout, where Planning Commission voted to deny the rezoning. City Council moved forward with it and said, we can discuss, options at the conditional use permitting phase. We get here, we're told that's not really how this works. So we really don't have much to go on here other than technicalities. And the technicality to me is a significant one in that it opens up Lot 1 to have the same conditional use on a technicality, because we approved it for Kwik Trip while it was still a single property. I think that, I believe it was a fellow named John earlier mentioned that we want businesses. We want beneficial businesses. In my opinion, the city seems a little misguided that any business is good business. I want long-standing business. I want business that's going to be here. And do I think Kwik Trip is that? Probably. Do I think we have a concentration of car washes and gas stations that's going to leave a blight on this community in the next 10 years? Absolutely. And we have enough vacant buildings, we have enough vacant businesses that I think we need to take a serious look at what our long-term intention is. So when we get in these conversations, they're useful, they're meaningful. We don't get caught with an ultimatum from the attorney saying that we have, essentially, to me it read as, you have to approve this or there's going to be a legal fight. And that's the technicalities. So we as a city have to do better from the start and actually follow what our plan commission says. There was a comment made by Dale Steinmetz that this is where we were supposed to go with this based on the comprehensive plan. It wouldn't have needed to be rezoned if it was part of the comprehensive plan. It wasn't meant to be before. So there's been a lot of shifting that's happened with this. And many of my other neighborhood residents have said it far more eloquently than I can. But, while I want good business there, and while I think Kwik Trip will be a good partner, this whole process has not felt good in any way.
Thank you. Anyone else online? Trevor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Luisa. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
On and on it seems to go. You don't know what you got till it's gone. Paved paradise, put up a parking lot. That's a little song I just wanted to share with everybody. It seems like there's been some substantial evidence shared tonight by a number of speakers, and if evidence that displays that this project could be harmful to the public. I'm just wondering, kind of alluded to in the last testimony, can we go back? I don't understand. Can we just say we made a mistake as a city? We made a mistake with the groundwater protections that are in place. It seems like a gas station doesn't make sense in a groundwater protection zone. So that's my question to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online? All right, we had one gentleman here who wanted to speak again. Go ahead. Try and keep your comments as succinct as possible.
I will. Thank you. Michael Corrigan, 3271 Tulip Lane. You have a responsibility to protect the citizens of Stevens Point and your neighbors, Plover, Whiting, the Portage County. Most people in this room don't agree with our own representative about moving this project forward. He has his own opinion, and I have my own opinion. Most people don't agree with moving this project forward. $40,000 in tax revenue, that hardly would take care of the pothole situation that we have in this town right now. We all can agree that this is going to be a commercial development. We're going to see stores in there. I would hope to see surgical units or whatever, but we do not want to see a 24/7 gas station on this property. You need to take a serious look at the consequences of what can happen. An attorney representing such mentioned that. If we go on this, all of this, what if? What if? We can't go on that. We got to go on something will happen. It will happen. You have a responsibility. I encourage you again to vote no on items 3 and 4.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've got something to add? It's not a handout, is it?
No, it's 17 of them.
Okay.
Savannah Hebier, 52724 Circle South. I just kind of actually wanted to echo a little bit of what was just said, but I want to re-hit home that I know that the packet that we gave you today from the neighbors is a lot, and it looks like it might be easy to dismiss as they are over-concerned or they're, trying to stop this or that, any of that type of thought. But truly what this is that we recognize that this whole process, we're supposed to trust our representatives. We're supposed to trust the city. We're supposed to trust staff. We're supposed to trust Kwik Trip. I don't know if we can have audience participation, but show of hands of anyone who attempted to or knows someone who attempted to reach out to Dale Steinmetz prior to the rezoning beforehand. Show of hands of anyone who actually got a response from him. So how do we trust in this process when that process, any neighbors here that are in favor of this that Dale talked to? Okay. So where are they? He's our representative. We're supposed to trust that we can go to him and say, these are why we don't want it, or this is what we want if it's going to happen, and trust that he's going to bring that to the relevant people and protect what our interest. He snuck in late. He's left already. He doesn't even want to talk to us after this meeting.
He was actually here on time.
Well, okay, he wasn't in here.
But ma'am, I got to stop you there, because Alderperson Steinmetz isn't what we're discussing here.
That's fine.
Everybody here has an opportunity to speak regardless of their representation, and that's what we're doing tonight.
That's fine. I'm just saying that there's a reason that the neighborhood has come with so many research points and our own, because I think it would be easy for everyone out here to say, God, can't those neighbors just trust us? There's a process for a reason. We have staff that are qualified. We have all this. Our representative has not done what we would like them to do, regardless of who it is. So I just want to put that out there, that he got up and said he was our alderperson, but I just want it to be made aware that he did not talk with a single one of us in the room. That's all I'll say.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, on that point.
We've got a couple more people who wish to speak again.
Yep.
Hopefully, again, they're succinct and we're adding new evidence, because, ma'am, I mean, I got to believe it was almost 15 minutes you were up there. So we've got to be respectful of everybody's time.
So when do we have longer conversations about this type of thing? I'm just curious.
Anytime between when the project was announced and when the council makes its final decision.
Okay. With this large group?
The large group is only the meetings.
Okay.
But if you need to disseminate, let's say you have, a handout. You can get it to the Community Development Department or any relevant department, and we will disseminate that to any members you choose.
I totally understand that. And I will just also add that I'm sure that the staff and the city have worked really hard on this conditional use permit plan. We got the notice 5 days ago. I know that this project has been out there and in the works, but without knowing what the staff was going to put forward, how are we supposed to come back? Because I'm sure you guys are going to say, hey, we have the lighting in here, we have this in here. We've only had that for 5 days, or since that was released. And it was over Christmas, it was over New Year's. It's just not a lot of time. So just some grace in the fact that, yes, we're coming with a lot of information and a lot of handouts and didn't submit them the proper way, but this is also something that we are not experts in, how to navigate city government. So, and we want to be involved, but it's also hard too with work and kids and everything that goes on in life to know every single meeting, every single plan that's going to impact us until it gets to a point where it's too late to have those conversations. It is what it feels like. That's, I think, kind of what I've been hearing from people, is that it feels like now is too late, because at the last meeting it was, we can't talk about that, and now it's we can't talk about it. Anyway, I will just say that the developer has met with only the people who abut up to the property and talked about an 8-foot cedar fence, which feels like it's signaling that anyone that doesn't directly abut up to that property, their opinion doesn't really matter. I question why we had to clear cut that property, knowing that a vegetative buffer is going to be the best mitigation for so much of what was talked about today. And lastly, to compare the residential risk of someone working on their car in their driveway to a 24-hour gas station, that just, that's a bit crazy to me. So yeah, I think that I'll just leave it there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I hope everybody understands, too. You used the word grace, and I really like that. I hope everybody understands that there's been a lot of latitude offered at all of these public hearings, because we understand that the general person who's sitting at their house may not know about these things, and they certainly don't know that it's always better to bring handouts ahead of time, or how to speak, or how to, whatever it happens to be. So we purposefully allow that latitude, because we understand that we deal with all of this stuff on a day-to-day basis. We don't expect other people who don't do this, because we all have lives too, but that's part of the point, is letting the process go through, and even if it's not quite on topic, we offered a pretty decent breath there. So continue on.
Thank you for letting me speak again. This is Amberly Schwartz, Portage County Supervisor, District 19. And I believe it was a Whiting Alder who mentioned the Portage County Wellhead Protection Ordinance coming to a change. And we have been working to edit that ordinance for a while now. And there's a good chance that we'll be on this coming board meeting. It's I believe our final edit should be in committee this month. So just to let everyone know, one of those changes, and this isn't like a new sudden change. This is changing it back to what it used to be because it was more protective of groundwater. But if you look, I know you can't quite tell where anything is on this map, but if we zoom in a bit, here we go. This is, Hoover, HH and Hoover, right? So I don't know if I'm pointing at the right spot. Here's your zone. Here's your spot that you're talking about. This is Wellhead Protection Zone B, which currently allows special exemptions for gas stations. The new version of the county wellhead protection plan will have those under prohibited. Gas stations will be prohibited in Wellhead Protection Zone B. I just want to point out too, I like visuals, sorry. Let's zoom in again. Here's my district. Again, those groundwater wells, I just want to point out, there's no protection for private groundwater wells at all, no filtering. It's up to them to decide if they even want to get it tested. And these are renters. They don't own the property. It's up to the landlord if they're ever going to test that water. Who knows what they're drinking? Anyway, here's the property in question. This is Wellhead Protection Zone B. Directly across the street is Wellhead Protection Zone A, where a gas station's already prohibited. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind and know that this, at least for the county, is going to change soon. So.
Thank you. Supervisor, you mentioned that it would prohibit gas stations. Has it already been voted on then?
No.
So, okay, so you're expecting it, that's what the proposal is?
Yes.
But that's not been voted on yet? Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been working on it for a while. It's almost there.
And we appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Me again, Chris Mechnick, 4416 2nd Street. One sentence. It should also be noted that the Portage County Groundwater Management Plan states that Whiting has already spent nearly $700,000 on its water treatment plant, plus maintenance. And importantly, a new type of treatment system would have to be installed for gasoline or car wash contaminants should they reach the wells. Thank you.
Sir?
Hello again, Eric Renfert, 3349 Orchid. Can't remember whether it was Mr. Steinmetz or one of the professional representatives for the developer, but somebody said the only way to vote no tonight, to shoot it down tonight or to delay it tonight, is to prove the staff report wrong. I'm sorry, but the staff report does not apply to the plots, the parcels that are being considered, and is therefore incorrect. If we were, in fact, to grant this conditional use to the entire 17 acres that is requested, that would probably come with a whole list of 8 or 10 more compatibility conditions, right? Screening and all that fun stuff. That is not contained in the report right now. The report is erroneously pointing at Lot 1, which does not yet exist. So I would again ask that you recommend delaying, if that's even a thing that's allowed, until that already submitted survey map is used to replat the site, and then it all makes sense. But right now, it's incorrect. Sorry.
Thank you. All right, public hearing is still open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third and final time, it's a legal thing. Public hearing is still open. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I know there were a few questions. Director?
Mm-hmm. Director.
You got a promotion.
There we go.
It was just an inside joke. He's a zoning administrator. So Administrator Kuhn, can you address the questions and then any other topics that were brought up that you might be able to assist with? Director Lemke, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing because a lot of this is related to water discharge and those sorts of things.
All right, so I guess a few points. I'll try to be brief since we're like, 2 hours or so in already. But I guess to start, sorry if I'm going to be a little nerdy in terms of Econ 101. I majored in that in undergrad, so bear with me a little bit. But there was a few commentaries about, is there a need for another gas station here in the city or in the broader Stevens Point metro area? Ultimately, Econ 101 says if there's a certain product or a certain service that's being provided, the best case scenario is that you reach that equilibrium point where the supply of said service or product matches the demand of that same commodity. There's situations where the supply of a certain service exceeds the demand, and from a business venture, that's where you see situations as, business is possibly closing up. Likewise, conversely, if there is a situation where the demand exceeds the supply, that's where you see situations where there's more of that product or service being rendered to help that supply make up for the demand that exists. I guess just a question, or not a question for the group, just something to think in the back of your minds is, should it be the government's responsibility, the government in this case being the city, to dictate what is that appropriate level of supply provided for a particular use or service? I'll be honest, I would have no idea as a city staff person to know for any service or commodity, what is that equilibrium point? I would trust the Kwik Trip folks to know that answer before me, before, no offense, but before any of us on the table. If Kwik Trip believes that there is the demand, that the demand in this area services is met to service an additional gas station and car wash facility, I would heed their judgment because they wouldn't be spending the time and money to pursue this project if that wasn't the case. Number two, I mentioned this earlier, I'm just going to reiterate this again about the land use changes that were adopted by this commission and the council in 2022. And I'll be blunt, reference Act 67, you folks are all familiar with it in your tenure as a commissioner. Act 67 is a pain in the butt, if I'm going to be blunt. It is quite restrictive, and it really does stymie any locality's ability to truly regulate as they deem fit and necessary. And would I wish that the state legislature would change Act 67 to add more local discretion? 100%. I would love it. Ultimately, these are the cards that we have dealt before us. This is the mechanism that we have to use to dictate whether the request should be approved or denied. Talking a little bit about the denial of any conditional use permit, and I'll tie in specifically to the gas station request. The council made the decision 4 years ago that based off of the time of travel located within both zones B and C, that a gas station use within those two wellhead zones are an appropriate land use, provided again that the standards in the zoning ordinance are met. If there is a desire by the commission to deny a conditional use permit for a gas station, it would have to be due to, in my opinion, it would have to be due to conditions unique to the specific gas station request at hand, and not due to any type of gas station, and not applied to any type of gas station that's located on that area. If there's a reason for denial of a conditional use permit that applies to gas stations across the board, regardless of what type of facility is proposed to be constructed, and at least in my opinion, you're veering more towards a legislative responsibility where you're deciding what land uses are and are not appropriate on given tracts of parcel, which again leads more to amendment of a zoning code rather than a conditional use permit that is ultimately what's before you all tonight. Revoking a conditional use permit. Obviously there's a lot of conditions, there may very well be more, and Ultimately, if there's conditions that you as commissioners feel should be added, obviously you are within your authority to do so as long as you can prove that rational nexus between the condition relative to compliance with any one of these 14 review standards. If the applicant, or any applicant for that matter, would not adhere to a condition at any point in the future after a conditional use permit's granted, I have the ability, as ordained in state statutes, to revoke the conditional use permit. So there's that added safeguard that if any one of these standards are not met, that conditional use permit can be revoked. Do I expect it? No, I have full faith and confidence that Kwik Trip would adhere to them, but there is that mechanism, there is that safeguard built into place currently. Talking about, again, minor amendments to conditional use permit approval, some examples that were given, some hypotheticals about what if there's a building addition down the road? What if there's changes in hour of operations at some point in the future for a car wash facility? I know this is veering towards the next item. Again, those would be situations beyond the scope of what's considered a minor amendment and would have to be brought before you folks for consideration of that amendment. Gas stations abutting residential uses. In this case, again, it's not necessarily the case because there is that proposed outlot north of Lot 1. But even so, just kind of cursory thought through my mind. You have the mobile gas station off of West Clark abuts residential uses. Likewise, the Shell gas station off of Stanley, the Kwik Trip off of Stanley. There's probably more, but just what came through my head right at that point. And then lastly, the question of why wasn't this parcel split prior to the request being brought before you? Frankly, that's a standard practice for really most types of larger developments that gets brought before you folks. Some examples that comes through my mind over the years, the Convent redevelopment property, there is a proposed CSM included in the packet for you folks to consider for the rezoning, the CUP, the street networks, etc. Ultimately, that was a condition of approval for the Convent redevelopment to be approved. Likewise, the Cousins and Tommy's car wash on the north side of town, like 3 years ago. Car wash on the east side of town off of Highway 10. That's just a standard policy, not only that the city pursues, but other communities as well. And that's really meant to add as, kind of a focusing more on the risk assessment point. A developer would not be looking to split the parcels and present all that time and money when there isn't that reassurance, there isn't that certainty provided by the governing body that the development that they're requesting is approved or not. I think that's about all. Director Lemke, I guess I'll defer to you as well if there's anything you want to talk about.
I made some notes here. They're going to be hard to read because I started jamming them all together, but I really appreciate all the commentary that came from the neighborhood here, and although we connected briefly, we didn't get to reconnect. I apologize for that. Everybody got long-winded at the afternoon, but if this comes down to looking at these conditions in a yes vote scenario, I do have some comments. If it comes down to a no vote scenario, it doesn't matter what they are, right? So I want to just put it in that context and say, here's some of the things that I heard, that if you're looking for feedback from me on how these could or would change, and I'll, in the process, also answer some of the things that were kind of asked or stated. First off, I want to highlight how and appreciate how Kwik Trip pointed out that we're the most restrictive they've worked for as a municipality goes. That's made it really hard to find guidance that is easy to point towards how to enforce it. It's made it really hard. And usually when we get off the phone with municipalities, regulators, DNR, we have hydrogeologists we've worked with that have worldwide experience. We have attorneys in this space. They all say, I'm interested to see how this turns out, right? So Stephen's point, as people pointed out, can take a lot of pride in being a leader in this space. They always have been. I hope they always will be. So I don't think that this changes that. 3. I mentioned being able to talk to Eric very briefly, but I do want to offer, because there are some things in here not fully inked yet, and happy to share perspective on that. If you want to look me up, I'm Joel Lemke. I'm at the Utilities Call. Main number there's 345-5260. Just ask for Joel. I'm there. Standard email convention, jlemke@stevenspoint.com. So just get a hold of me. One of the things that was asked was about continuous monitoring. Actually, this is in the written portion, and I'm sorry I didn't make notes on whose questions they were. I think this was from Christine's write-up that maybe you haven't seen yet. That is immediate notification. And one of the things, and I've got 5 or 6 things for you guys. One of the things that I think makes sense to change in there, because in number 7, we refer to proper authorities, and the proper authorities, it doesn't make sense to not just spell them out, so let's do that, right? The utility directors of Stevens Point and the Village of Whiting, as well as the fire chiefs. We depend on the fire departments when there is a spill to be the responding party, so they're the ones, along with us, that should be notified, so we should add that. There's a question about who's on the hook. Number 21 says Kwik Trip's on the hook, and that's our intent, to put them on the hook for costs associated with contamination events. Number 12, monitoring wells. It says quarterly right now. This is another thing in performance standards that I think is part of our evolution. I don't think it's very clearly stated in any conditions. Certainly will work its way into a response, a spill response plan. So if it should be in the conditions, we can certainly do it. But if there is a monitoring event, and I can show anybody what those monitoring events look like. I have one pulled up on my computer. There's 9 contaminants and 3 surrogates. I'm not a chemist, but that get monitored quarterly. They get reported to me directly. The emails usually read, this store number, here's the test results, everything's non-detect. I've been getting those for years. They're really boring. So if you want to see one of those, I can show you, actually for their stores in town right now. I can show you those, willing to do that. But what I was going to get at is that if there's a monitoring event that shows a detect where the upstream monitoring well, that is upstream of their store from a groundwater flow perspective, has 0 detect, and downstream has a detect, we should increase that monitoring until something's been done. So we could change that to monthly, we could change that to whatever. I think that's appropriate. 20B. Oh, that was just another comment in the write-up. 20B does discuss reporting the maximum quantity of product that can be on site. Number 22, another proposal there. Testing required. I think we should change if warranted to just if warranted by Director of Public Utilities. Put the ownership out there so that we're not wondering who's warranting it. And I will say, to one of the other points that was made, if anything gets beyond our internal capabilities with the many people that we have, and by the way, we have 2 state certified labs within our operation, but if it should go beyond that, we will seek out professional help, and we often do. So don't be worried about that. What was the incentive to respond quickly? The COP being pulled is the biggest need to respond quickly. Let's see, additional monitoring. Okay, one other thing, and this would be new, but I don't think it's out of line, and it might be quite telling. I don't want to get into other issues here, but there are certainly uses between this proposed site and the actual wellhead that very likely today have a measurable impact on Whiting's raw water before they treat it. If appropriate, we could actually change the monitoring well situation slightly to try to be somewhere near halfway. And we could be upstream, immediately downstream, and then almost to the well field on either public right-of-way or in Whiting's well field if they agree to that. That's something for you guys to consider, but I think it's appropriate. So that's one of the other proposals to think about. A lot of other notes here, sorry. And then the other thing I wrote down was related to the lifespan analysis. There's some truth to the fact that we've never created an infallible container, right? I think that's a really interesting perspective. That is what we're trying to engineer the problem away through by monitoring continually interstitial space so that if one container fails, we know it. And if there's a better way to do that, I've got that as a note. We'll certainly throw it in the plan, but right now that is definitely best industry standard from everybody that I could find. Whether or not that meets everybody's comfort level is a different thing, but that's where we're at from an engineering perspective right now. And finally, just from my perspective, I don't know how the mechanics of it work, but everything that I'm talking about here as it relates to groundwater stuff, if the motions or whatever can have it reflect to the proposed Lot 1, that's absolutely appropriate. There's nothing outside of that any of these need to pertain to. So if that's one of the concerns, and there's a elegant way to work that into the motion, I find that appropriate. But that's all I got.
All right. Commissioners, before we begin our discussion, I just was making some notes in my head mentally driving around town. The roads are a little slippery, so be careful. Downlighting. So the gas station that is on Business 51 North near Festival Foods is an empty lot away from residential units. One of the things, the restrictions that we put on that one were downlighting, which I think is very appropriate, and the sound barrier buffer, whether that's vegetative or a mechanical structure, is fine. I think we should strongly consider that. The car wash on the south side near Antique It Up, or the south side, what most of us know as a south side shopping center, is across the street from about 100 residential units. We restricted that through the conditional use process to cease car wash operations at 9 p.m. The proposal is 10, but just something for you to consider. That also is adjacent to residential units. So I wanted to point those out. I think the director and all of the comments here tonight too warrant at least some clarifications and maybe some additional conditions to put on here. But without that, we're going to discuss first. So thoughts and comments, because my guess is that when we make a motion, there will likely be either turning it down or adding some conditions to the conditional use permit. So I'd like the discussion first, please. Commissioner Schuler.
Is the city attorney available?
I think he was going to be here. I think he's in the overflow room. Logan, if you are in the overflow room, could you please come in here?
I'm staring at the door, sorry.
With great anticipation.
Greetings.
I have no idea what you're going to ask me, so.
What's the capital of Madagascar?
Oh, boy.
I don't know that one.
Antananarivo.
Okay.
It's the only one I know.
I want to just kind of a brief preview. I totally get and I think I share the frustration of having the process be either kind of unknowable or hard to really get your head around or find a way to, I guess, in a meaningful way, try to contribute to it and understand it, right? So I apologize because it's frustrating for us too, because we obviously want to hear from people. The word trust was used, and I think I could see where people might have a hard time trusting if you don't think that you're listened to or you don't have an obvious ability to see just what all the pieces are. There was a gentleman online who said he felt it was a bait and switch the entire time, and really it wasn't, but I can understand why he perceived it that way. And I guess as a body, we'll try to get better at how, I don't know, information goes out. There's different ways that the timing works, and it's difficult, but for you, young man, tonight there's been like this, not a battle, but a back and forth about what substantial evidence is, right? And everybody has a very good feeling that their substantial evidence is the substantial evidence. And so just as a preamble, as a commissioner, we sit here, staff works with the applicant, receives the information from the applicant, reviews it with their professional expertise, likely goes back and forth with the applicant to get what becomes the final application. They then present a staff report that discusses whether or not they feel it met the standards. And so one half of my question is it appropriate for us, because we're not technical professionals, we're relying on staff who we trust with their education, their experience, to give us good advice, right? Which is what we're supposed to do to the council. So now, is it reasonable for us to think that if staff represents to us that the standards have been met based on the information they've reviewed, that we can have comfort that that's the case, and certainly raise our own questions if we think not? But that would be a way that we would approach that. Tonight, we have folks who did a lot of different research on a lot of different topics, brought us things, unfortunately in a way that we can't really vet or think about them in the depth that with which they're offered, that seemingly say, hey, we don't think that that substantial evidence has been made. You know, they're supposed to do it, they didn't. We sort of rely on staff to give us their review of whether or not the information submitted is. How the heck, as a plan commission, do we discern what is really good substantial evidence for us to make a well-reasoned decision? Kind of a horseshit question, I know. I apologize that, but it's true. That's kind of what we struggle with, right? Is we're supposed to make a decision based on that, and how can we have comfort saying, okay, yeah, I think we really do have the evidence that we need, if you have two competing versions of it like this, in part?
No, that's a perfectly reasonable question. I mean, I'll get to some technical stuff in a second, but first I just want to say, like, you know, if you are, like, have you ever participated in a jury trial?
I've been dodging it successfully so far.
Say that louder into the mic, please. Anyone in here ever participated in a jury trial? Here, Attorney Wolfgram, come.
I've been in a jury trial.
So, especially in, you know, significantly more complex cases, but I mean, even in the context of the little OWI jury trials that I do, the judge has to read the jury instructions to the jury. You do some of that at a certain phase, you do some of it at a different phase, and it takes a while. I mean, this stuff might be, you know, 8 or 9 pages of text that they're reading through. And it tells the jury what they can treat as evidence, what they should not treat as evidence, what they should and should not do in terms of assigning credit to various pieces of evidence. And what, you know, ultimately there is discussion of the burden of proof in there, you know, whatever it happens to be for the type of case that's at hand. And in spite of all of that direction that's provided, sometimes deliberations take a while. I mean, you know, I have had very open and shut, so to speak, OWI cases where it takes a couple hours for the jury to sort through everything. So don't feel like you're being falling short of your responsibilities here if you go, man, this is a lot of stuff to take in and it's hard to make a decision. Like, yeah, that's correct, it is. So the statute
does provide a definition, I think we heard it quoted earlier tonight, for substantial evidence, which it's actually somewhat unusual for there to be a definition for this, but I think the more recent updates to this statute probably had this type of thing in mind. Now, I'll read it to you just for conversation's sake. It says, substantial evidence means facts and information other than merely personal preferences or speculation directly pertaining to the requirements and conditions an applicant must meet to obtain a conditional use permit and that reasonable persons would accept in support of a conclusion. So, facts and information can't just be personal opinion or whatever you know, catastrophizing some sort of thing or lauding some sort of thing. Directly pertaining to the requirements and that reasonable people would find to be acceptable. So, you can have that definition, you can say it out loud, you can even go through it twice like I just did. But then you start to say, well, what does this part of this mean? And what does this part of that mean? And it's like, ultimately you have to be able to rely on your own understanding of language and apply it. There's no bedrock of definition at the bottom of the pile that you can get to where all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and it's crystal clear. There's ultimately going to be a weighing of evidence based on the factors that you would use in determining whether or not you believe it meets that criteria. So that's kind of a roundabout way of saying, yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, it is what you're tasked with doing. And I mean, most members of this commission have been serving on it for a while. And you obviously see all kinds of different conditional use permits. The majority of them are equally, well, not equally, but still pretty detailed in terms of the documentation you get, but we might not get a ton of comments because it's something that like nobody really has strong opinions about. But tonight, obviously, it's something that a lot of people have very strong opinions about, which means that you have a lot more information because we've heard several hours of commentary. So one thing I would say is that, and I know this is, maybe I'm just like throwing ideas out there that everyone will cling to like a life raft here, but with the amount of information that you've taken in tonight, if you don't want to make a decision on this right away, it's totally reasonable for you to adjourn this matter to a later but reasonably later date and take it up again once everyone has had a chance to thoroughly review you had written materials provided to you. Obviously, you should have read the packet and taken in the staff report ahead of time, but you got a couple hours of comments from people. So that would not be a crazy thing to do by any means. Again, juries take a while to deliberate. Sometimes you make arguments and submit briefs to a judge, and they take weeks to chew on it before they give you a decision. So I don't think you should feel obligated to make a decision on this right here tonight. There's no sort of shot clock ticking down that is imminently going to cause a problem. There are ultimately some timetables within which a decision has to be made, but tonight is not when the buzzer will sound.
One quick follow-up to that then. One of the things that a lot of this hinges on is, I guess the word nexus has been used, a direct connection between what the evidence is and its veracity or whatever, right? Or whatever the word might be. So we have a lot of information about how these systems can, and in many people's experience, will go bad, right? But does the fact that it's just speculation or sort of a best prediction based on prior practice, can that be the connection that says that it is inherently bad and will not protect the resource? I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to, right? Are there technical remedies that we can put in place to help safeguard the resources? Or is the evidence that this can and will go bad and you should never approve it? I'm paraphrasing and being a little whatever. But that's kind of the two choices, right? We have the technical aspects of things that we feel can protect it. We have folks saying it never works, it never will, and if you do, this will go bad. How do you, I guess, weigh the, just how do you weigh that in how to make a proper decision, I guess? If you believe, okay, I think the predictions are going to come true, is that substantial evidence, although they've provided enough information to say that often these things do fail, right? But we have what is described as an extraordinary amount of detail and information that says it will protect the resource. I mean, that's almost like the hinge for this whole idea, right? Is can we reasonably, and many people say, no, you can't, but can we reasonably say that our effort and our conclusion is that we can protect the resource? That's my struggle. It's a yes or no question.
That was a question?
See you later. So, I'm going to sound like a huge geek here for a second, even more than normal. But, I mean, on a long enough timetable, every system fails, but on a long enough timetable, eventually the heat death of the universe comes about, and our cares about things tend to dwindle. So setting a bar, like if you were to say, we are not going to prove this unless there is a system in place that without any maintenance whatsoever will be protective of the groundwater with absolute certainty for 150 years. That would probably be an unreasonable standard to set. And I don't think there'd be a lot of disagreement about that. Now, obviously, if it was, well, here's the thing, and we're going to build it this way, but there's 55 examples of them being built exactly this way, where the median failure date with adequate, consistent maintenance was 14 years. Well, obviously, we would never agree to that either. That's insane. So we haven't had a whole lot of presentation here tonight about that level of specificity, at least not that I've heard. We've heard some comments from some speakers about underground tanks failing. We've heard some stats about the number of them that have failed within, I believe, the state of Wisconsin. But I don't think we saw, like, here are the case studies of X, Y, and Z individual occurrences of that. Here are the technologies that were in place. Here was the actual, like, after investigation, what was revealed to have been the failure mode of the system. Here's why it wasn't noticed in time, et cetera, et cetera. That type of information certainly is relevant and would be probative here of the questions you're asking. But I don't think we've heard anything quite to that level. Now, one thing I did want to point out, and Adam, maybe you can direct my eyes on this, but I think this was on page 10 of your report for this. It said, included is a letter from Kwik Trip's environmental compliance manager regarding spill response and protection. I'm not sure I actually saw that in here. I think I saw 3 pages of letter with Kwik Trip letterhead on it and didn't see anything matching that description.
Is that page 10?
Your comment indicating the nature of the letter is on page 10.
No, yeah.
And then the letters are later on, but I didn't see any letter of that type.
Yeah, it should be in there, and if not, I mean, I'm sure, Kevin, if you wanted to provide a verbal, or if you want to, if you want to provide a verbal summary.
I need you up at the microphone, please.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't included, right? Did you see it in the packet?
Kevin Nestigan with Kwik Trip again. The thing about the environmental controls, is it the one I submitted in December 23rd?
Yeah, it was, what, maybe like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it talks about the environmental protection controls that Kwik Trip is proposing. Stuff that I discussed the first time I was up here, first being the double wall flex fuel piping. Next being the line leak detection, the electronic line leak detection. Third was the double wall fiberglass tanks. Next is the double wall spill buckets. So where the fuel tankers that fill up the underground tanks, they have spill buckets. So if they were to happen to overfill a tank or spill some, there's a spill bucket to contain that fuel. And that also is a double wall spill bucket. the fuel tank vapor recovery systems. That's the stage 1 vapor recovery, where the fuel transport truck, when it fills up the underground fuel tank, it also has a vapor line to recover the vapors that are displaced from that tank so they're not emitted into the environment. The 6th one was refueling vapor recovery. So when a automobile is fueling their tanks, it touches on that the vehicles have onboard refueling vapor recovery systems built into the vehicles. 7th was the stormwater protection. Discussed that earlier. That's within the stormwater manholes, stormwater structures. There is that oil water skimmer structure to contain any fuel product. I also made mention of our internal Kwik Trip policy of parking lot power washing. We have a vendor that goes out to all of our stores annually to power wash the area under the fuel canopy between there and the store, where there could be fuel staining from like oil leak spills. And all that water that is power washed off the lot is recovered. It's not just washed down into the storm sewer. It's recovered and properly hauled off site for disposal. And then lastly was our spill contingency plan, which we have a separate, very large, all-encompassing document of our spill response plan that talks about our 24/7 Operation Support Center that takes calls from our retail stores, and then discussion on our spill response vendors that we have strategically placed throughout Kwik Trip's region that can respond timely to fuel spills and cleanup. So that was that document.
Anything else, Commissioner?
Just a couple quick things.
Keep going.
I apologize again. So we have a situation where the council went ahead and rezoned this to B4. And gas stations are a permitted use in B4. And we are looking at a conditional use based on the wellhead protection mapping, which is fine. It's what it is. We also have, in terms of groundwater mapping, you have different jurisdictions with different designations. You've got groundwater management plans, as mentioned by Supervisor Schwartz, that these things can go back and forth. What was prohibited was a conditional use, now will be prohibited by the county again. In 2 years, it could be something different. And so it's kind of a moving target as to how to really feel about the intentions for land use on a particular piece of property. And that's just kind of a neutral statement of it. Things change with different municipal boards. And so that's another part of kind of my internal conflict on this, is you have a zoning which calls it a permitted use, except for the overlay. You've got different versions of what that property is in terms of the recharge for the well. And again, it's hard to just land on something that's right. And I guess part of this is I want to explain to folks that this is just the kind of back and forth that we have to deal with. I'm not complaining about it, but it's just trying to have you understand what our process is. You know, it's a lot of times the comments will come in and it's like, well, you guys just sit up there and you don't listen and you vote on something. And I just wanted to say that we do listen, and it's what our job is. And so thank you for bearing with us. That's it for me.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, what did you say?
Yeah.
I have a question for
Commissioner
the
Shady Strike.
So we've heard tonight too, based on groundwater, that Whiting has one, the county is looking at revamping theirs. Whose groundwater clause are we most to pay attention to?
Ours.
Ours, okay.
I mean, I'll let the director answer.
I kind of thought that was the case. I just wanted the clarification.
I just want to say, as it relates to that, when we go back to the changes made several years ago, the city didn't adopt the same maps that the county did at that time. We all worked together because of the fact that there were 2 communities with municipal drinking water systems in the county that did not have groundwater overlay zoning districts, wellhead protection overlay zoning districts. And everybody recognized the importance behind that. So we changed the way our shapes work to fit newer methodologies behind A, B, and C. The biggest difference, I think, is actually in Zone B. You saw the maps with the green lines. The county adopted a Zone B that kind of utilizes those fingers, and we adopted one that rounds them off to fill in everything in between, being a little more restrictive. And everything in the city, in addition to within 3 miles of the city, as long as it's not a village, goes under the city's ordinance, because we have that 3 mile extraterritorial. So that's why in the county's maps, you'll see everything that's in the city kind of grayed out. A lot of times that's to signify the fact that that's city jurisdiction.
Any other questions right now? Okay. Commissioner Arntzen?
I guess my main issue with this whole consideration is that the staff report was done with the view of the property fitting in Stevens Point Wellhead Protection District C. As we've shown, it's in Whiting Wellhead Protection District B, which, and as is pointed out, they don't allow gas stations in their Wellhead Protection District B. The boundary agreement and the Stevens Point Wellhead ordinance says that we will consider other municipalities' wellhead protections and acknowledge them, but essentially it says we'll do it on our terms. We'll use our definition. So in that case, even acknowledging that, yes, this is in Wellhead Protection Zone B of the Whiting Municipal Well, it's a conditional use, therefore we can consider that. And this was an issue the last time this came up when we discussed whether or not we should change it to the zoning classification or not, and kind of got voted down because of this specific case. We didn't think it was an appropriate use. But, you know, Jeff's talking about, is there a definitive way to look at this? And I guess the one thing I go back to is that Wellhead Protection District A, kind of universally, statewide anyway, certainly all the communities say, no gas stations in Wellhead Protection District A, right? And that Wellhead Protection District A is defined by the cone of depression. And now of the municipal well, that's site-specific determined. And the village of Whiting was developed based on a USGS study back in the 80s, 88. And Chris asked, they got a pretty fast flow rate there, almost 3 feet per day. And now I worked with Chris, Village Green subdivision, that was my master's thesis. And right, we did a bunch of work in the mid to late 80s to evaluate the effects of unsewered subdivisions on groundwater quality. Village Green in particular, because it was a potential threat to the village of Whiting. So Chris's point of saying that we incorporated this to protect the village of Whiting Wellfield, and now we're going to allow a gas station to go there. And I would argue that, you know, a gas station, yes, you can have all kinds of controls, but it is what did I call it? A demonstrable existential threat to public health and safety.
Those are $5 words.
They are big ones, but that is, I think, any gas station is a potential time bomb, let's say. Not to say that it will, but it could. But now, in this particular situation, the property is actually within the Whiting Wellhead Protection District A. It's just that it was cut off on the map because it just goes to boundaries, road center lines or something. I read that, and I think in a Stevens Point one. But the, the site, what did I say? The capture zone is 1,440 feet. And that applies to the wellhead boundary. So it's not the well, it's the property boundary. And that's how wellhead protection Zone A are defined. Stevens Point, everybody's. So using that, the property is within the Whiting Wellhead Protection District A. De facto, using physical things, eliminating political boundaries, saying we're going to round it off here. They don't have jurisdiction in Stevens Point, so they got to chop it off there. Using the actual physical conditions, the property is within Wellhead Protection District A for the Whiting Municipal Well. Because it is a demonstrable existential threat, that is clear, substantial evidence that it does not comply with Factor 1 with the public health and safety. Stevens Point, no, Whiting is who we're talking about, and that all comes into play. So I think that is really the determining factor. I think all these arguments that they came up, traffic, lighting, air, all of these other ones are valid and worthy of consideration. They're a little bit more subjective. I don't know if there's enough substantial evidence, but looking at it in a completely objective way, the property is within the Whiting Wellhead Protection District A and thus is unacceptable.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
I'm just curious, what can we get to substantiate that? I'd be curious if Director Lemke, if you kind of agree with that assessment based on just the physical parameters that Commissioner Arnson is talking about.
It's spelled out in the...
Director, you want to come up and address that?
Cone of depression, yes, is 1,500 feet from the property boundaries of the Whiting well field. That's round up from the 1,422 feet of the cone of depression, but it's entirely consistent with our wellhead. We don't specify a number, but that's because cone of depression is specific to the wells. Village of Whiting had the USGS do a study on a whole bunch of these things when they were first developing these wellhead protection plans. They did the hydrogeologic analysis and said, this is what it is. And so, again, it is an objective way of looking at it.
Thank you.
I don't disagree with the objective part of looking at it, but my understanding is the adopted ordinance is that it's Whiting's Zone B, right? What they've adopted in ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's the political side of things.
I can confirm that. Now, to speak to the property boundaries, I just pulled up some of our stuff from our most recent change. The terminology, of course, changes over time. The most recent one we've done is for our new well 12, which is replacing well 4, which is down just north of Highway 10 west of the Plover River. That zone of influence, which is what we refer to it now, has a radius of 1,747 feet. So it's inconsistent depending on the well. It depends on how much the well produces. So you take that well running continuously for 45 days or something, I don't know, and how much water, how far it goes to have a time of travel of 1 year, I believe. I believe that's a standard right now. And that's why what we did is from the well, you take that 1,747 feet.
And this is on our well 12.
This is on ours, and so I think we're talking about the same thing, kind of reverse. From the well, the point, you go that far out, and then whatever properties that touches, we include in our A. I don't know if they did that on theirs, but what they adopted does not include this property. That I know. So you're not, like, you could use a different methodology to get to a point where you say that's Zone A, but their adopted zones, it's not Zone A. If that, I don't know if that is where you're going.
For political reasons, right. Because
Well, for
they
actual,
adopted
what they adopted as a plan.
Well, but
reasons,
again,
right?
if you look at the Kona Depression and the way they discuss it, they say this far from this property boundary, and the property falls within there, and for whatever reason, they decided to call it quits at the center line of Hoover Avenue. Now, that was theirs, political decision or whatever, but the fact is, the capture zone plus the property boundary reaches the subject property.
So I think if you go Chairman Lutz left already. Is there anyone else representing the Village of Whiting here? Nothing? Okay. Sorry, I thought maybe we get some clarification on it.
I think the difference is you're going from the edge of the property the well's on versus going from the well to any property that touches. Those actually measure out differently.
Correct, yes, yes, yes. And if you measure the capture zone from the well itself, the property is beyond that. But again, so much of these wellhead protection ordinance, Zone A's are based on the wellhead property and not the well itself. So they apply the capture zone radius to the property boundary. And I think they do that just to give a little bit more buffer.
Yeah, and so you don't have to try to put a condition on half of a property.
Right.
You can't really do that, right?
Right.
Any property that's hit by the circle, and then every other part of that same property.
Which is curious why this property, well, because it's in Stevens Point, not Whiting, so I don't know if that played into how they set their limits. It's a Whiting ordinance.
Well, at the time, though, it was town of Plover when they adopted it. So it's not because it was city, because it wasn't
Okay,
at the time.
all right, all right. Outside their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Any other commissioners?
I mean, a lot of compelling testimony tonight, but it seems like we're still building this. I mean, if the director's taking comments from the audience and adding those to things he wants to write up, I feel like it's half-baked. I don't think I can vote tonight. So I'd ask the chair to, unless it's a no vote, at least to bring it back so staff and the director can get together and...
Here's what I would suggest then, Commissioner. A motion to postpone until the next Plan Commission meeting would certainly be in order. However, I would appreciate the commissioners being clear on what they expect to get that's new.
I'll make that motion. I would also ask with the spill plan, is that not in front of us just based on timing? Is it not in front of us because it's not something you'd put in front of Plan Commission? There were a couple of questions I had for Director Lemke. Most of them were answered, but you know, what happens if we discover that Kwik Trip doesn't let us know within 24 hours? You know, who are the people that we depend on? Is it just the DNR when we do have disputes? And if there are other contributing factors that could create a problem for source drink or for drinking water, does that create a problem for us where it becomes a pointing in multiple directions if something does happen? So, yeah, I think there's just a lot of more clarification. The city attorney hit on it where a lot of the things that you know, I was prepared to ask didn't come up in some of these things, and I do feel like a lot of those, they're not really what-ifs or speculation so much as just clarification to know how does this play out if we do have a problem.
Director?
I forgot what your first question was.
What recourse do we have?
Well, and the first question was, you're taking some points from the audience, right, that you thought could make some stronger language. Do you feel like you still need to tinker with this a little bit to get it where you would want it?
Well, I'll tell you what I'd say is I'm willing to tinker with it, but the stuff that I propose changes to, I heard some, well, how do we know type thing, right? Earlier, you heard comment to how we'll have meetings like this where there is zero testimony, right? Obviously, this isn't one of those. Does that mean that this would end up substantially different if there was zero testimony? It would end up much like you have it proposed here. But is it appropriate to identify who the responsible party is? Yeah, that's appropriate. Do we know who it is? Yeah. But they're asking who it is, so put it in there. You know, I don't think that changes the face of this a whole lot. what compels you to do something, and we had a conversation about this earlier today before a city staff meeting. If you're found in violation of one of these items, they can pull the permit. That's what it is. That's why if we want to get very specific about something in particular, and that was the effort here in a couple of these, and like I said, a couple of these are new items, new to us having items that are new to the industry already, that, yeah, we can look into some things a little more. I'm not, the scenario that we're dealing with here is one where you can come at it from a couple angles. If there's reasonable things in here that can be met, it's going to be approved, right? As staff, we come at these going, if this gets a yes, we want to make sure that we've got things in writing that we're comfortable we can use to properly manage this, right? And if it never comes to that, well, okay, it never comes to that. But we have to be prepared for that. We're more prepared for this site than we have been in past ones, I'll tell you that. But I also know that this is a particularly sensitive site. I will say, not to question anybody's commitment to groundwater here, because there are a lot of people who are committed to groundwater here, the proximity of the neighborhood to this is probably a bigger factor than the proximity to the well, which is where my focus is, right? So that stuff, I think, is all really, really close. And the detail to come in the documents that need to be approved yet, staff level approval. Can those be brought forward? I suppose they can. I think it's routine to do it this way. I don't get into conditional use stuff a lot, so.
But as far as a spill plan, that came up a few times. That's not with us because this is a unique situation. It's got to be built yet.
Yes, first, we don't, we haven't done this. Like they said, the only monitoring wells they have in our system are in Stevens Point. We started with, maybe the store on the east side off Badger. It might have been the first one. I don't really remember. Like I said, there's only 2 or 3. So in an effort to create some performance standards, this is where we got to from the, what can we enforce? Let's put it somewhere that is enforceable. And frankly, let's not fall back on statutory language, because it's not going to get us to where we want to be quick enough. Those are the big goals.
Commissioner Schuler?
I think a lot of people will be curious about, first, is the spill response plan something that possibly could be completed in time for the next Plan Commission meeting? Or is, okay. And the second is, are the mechanics of the notification system implementable and sustainable? It's really nice to have a sheet of people who are going to call, but how dedicated in terms of responsibility are the people who have to make the call, the people who have to pick up the call when it's made, that type of a thing. I think people would like some reassurance that if it's said it's going to happen, that it can reasonably happen.
Well, one of the things I don't know how to answer there is this organization versus another, right? Mm-hmm. We heard them talk about, did you say 900 stores, something like that? And there's a spill response center 24/7. I'm not sure how many organizations have that kind of thing. And my impression is that these need to be written to apply to anybody that wants to do the same thing, right?
Sure, yeah. And
so I can say from having those conversations and seeing their documentation, seeing their plans, I mean, we so much as asked for it, and they had one on hand already, like, here's where we start. And it's not insignificant, right? I don't know if we'd get that from everybody. And I'm not saying we wouldn't. It's just that if you're a smaller organization or it's a different corporate structure or something, these rules applying to somebody doing the same business, I don't know if we could say, hey, does your spill response center that's staffed 24/7 have directions specific to each store because they have different conditions than one in Wausau will have? I'm betting they'll say yes to that. I don't know what everybody would say to that. And so I don't want to complicate that, but when we're writing these, yeah.
I think, so there haven't been a ton of times tonight where I've felt that it was appropriate for me to be extremely definite about legal issues, but this is actually one of them. So saying, well, how can we rely on what might happen in the future with regards to consistent compliance with a spill plan or, notifications to happen immediately and all that? So part of the statute says if an applicant for a conditional use permit meets or agrees to meet all of the requirements and conditions specified in the city ordinance or those imposed by the city zoning board, the city shall grant the conditional use permit. So they just have to agree to meet them. That doesn't leave really on its face, any wiggle room to say, well, we doubt that you can follow through on that. Now, if I came forward, I'm the applicant, and I wanted to do Logan's DIY one-off gas station, you might say, well, you seem pretty poorly capitalized. I don't believe that you have the ability to actually follow through on any of these. You'd be right. But, maybe in that type of situation, but not like a very large, sophisticated corporation with a big portfolio of similar sites. So I would strongly encourage you not to go down that particular avenue of analysis on it.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Anything else, commissioners? Let's go to Alderperson Nebo.
Long time ago, I saw a movie called The Deer Hunter. Maybe some of you have seen it. Long time ago. But it involved gambling on Russian roulette. And in my mind, putting a gas station in a wellhead protection zone is gambling on Russian roulette. You put this shell in a chamber and you spin the chamber and you put the gun to your head. You build a gas station, you hope that the tanks won't leak. You hope that the monitoring wells catch a spill. You hope that somebody won't hit the tanker as it's driving in, causing it to disgorge its entire amount of gasoline out onto the street. There's a lot of protections for leakage, but there's nothing for anything that happens on the surface. There's no way to protect against some drunk driver hitting a gas tanker just as they pull into a parking lot. I mean, you don't know. It may never happen. It may happen tomorrow. You just don't want to put that shell in a chamber and spin it and then put that to your head. This is a really unique situation. It's not like Stanley Street or Highway 10, although that gas station is in, it's an area that's wet almost all year. Shouldn't be there either. I can't support this. I like the delay. I mean, they're saying they've been discussing a conceptual plan with the highway department and the county highway staff. We don't know if they're going to get the permission to put that road in there, make that cut onto Hoover or HH. We haven't seen the spill plan. I would like to see that before I make a decision, but at this point, if I had to vote tonight, I would vote no, because I think putting a gas station in a wellhead, this sensitive, a wellhead protection area, is putting a shell in a chamber, spinning it, and hoping that when you pull the trigger, the bullet's not in that chamber.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Can I make a motion to table this until the next meeting?
Postpone until the next meeting. Anything specific that you would want to see, the spill plan?
Well, that was requested, if that's something the director can do. I do feel like there's some things that came up tonight that, the director and city staff may take under advisement. And there may be an opportunity. It sounds like some of these folks were really trying to get information to us that gives them a little bit more time to get information to staff.
Good. Do we have a second there?
I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion there? Let's go to city attorney and then the fire chief.
Just a really quick comment I wanted to make. It doesn't relate directly to the motion, but I'd heard comments a couple times tonight about wanting to see the property like the CSM filed ahead of time. Just to clarify, while we spend most of our time in these types of discussions talking about the conditions or whether to approve something or not, there is ultimately still here is the thing we're going to build, hence the extremely detailed engineering drawings. So if it was, hey, we approved the conditional use permit, and then they just build something drastically different, i.e. on a different location within the property, well, that would not be in compliance with the conditional use permit. It's predicated upon the plan set that's submitted. So I think just to those specific concerns, I don't think are troublesome at all. So.
Good. Thank you. Chief?
Just to answer one of the questions that came up here earlier was what type of spill response program do we have in place here within the city, and who's responding to those types of calls? I just want to point out that the fire department is that contact or that call. We respond 365, 24/7. There hasn't been a call that has related to a spill in 2025 or prior to my knowledge that we did not respond to in the appropriate manner. In 2025, I can tell you I was pulling up the data next door while everyone was talking over here, and we had 27 plus spill responses in the city of Stevens Point in 2025. We responded to every one of those and mitigated the scene. Depending on whether it was dealing with soil samples or what type of material that the fluid leaked out onto or into a waterway or into a sewer drain. We have resident experts here in the city that assist us with that program, whether it's the water department, the DNR, DPW, and streets department. And again, it depends on how many gallons are spilled as well, depending on where that's reported and who it's reported to. So to answer that question, it is the fire department. We have hazmat operations and technicians standing by on a daily basis to be able to facilitate those things. And if it gets above our expertise, we bring specialists in from other agencies to assist us through the Mavis response. So,
thank you.
You bet.
All right. Yes.
Real quick, just the comment from Alderperson Kneebone about the not knowing if the road's going to get approved. That's actually was some deliberation that was had privately between the applicant, the property owner, County Highway Commissioner Check. Ultimately, it was at the discretion of the County Highway Committee Chair to have the city consider the request first, and then if the city would approve of these conditional use permits, then they would take it up before the County Highway Committee. I know it's a chicken or the egg approach. Personally, I would like it if they would consider it first, because it adds more clarity for you folks, but hence that's why it's a condition on the CUP request.
Yeah, and there's a lot of chicken and egg stuff that we have to deal with, right? In all likelihood, if the conditional use doesn't get approved, and I don't want to speak for the developer or the owner or anybody, but maybe instead of doing something else and not doing the Kwik Trip, maybe they clear cut the property and turn it into a giant compost site. In which case you wouldn't want to parcel it off. So we have a lot of those things, especially in our development agreements, Alderperson Kneebone, you know this, where they're called conditions for a reason, if then. And that's why we do it. So to say that we shouldn't be doing this because we don't have a spill plan is fine, but the spill plan must be in place before the conditional use is active. So the fact that we don't have it today, they still will not be able to do anything until we have it, because it's a condition if it were approved as is. The other thing I wanted to point out is up on the slide here when we were talking about pre-2022 and post-2022 and our groundwater protection ordinance. Post-2022, anybody who was on the Plan Commission at that time and anybody who was on the Common Council at that time voted to allow gas stations in Wellhead Groundwater Protection Overlay District B. If that's not what you want anymore, we need to change that. But in 2022, every plan commissioner and every person who was on city council voted to approve that language, which included the gas stations.
Just point of clarification.
Sure.
Commissioner Rice, you were excused that meeting, so
well, no,
I don't want to call.
You're right. Everyone that attended.
I want to helping you out here.
So I'm going to do these publicly so they're on record, so you can go back and watch the video along with all the public comments. I want to see item number 7, or condition number 7, changed, where it says, meaning that an alarm shall sound or proper authority shall be immediately notified.
Yeah.
I want to change that or to an and.
Yep.
And then, working with Director Lemke, I want you to spell out who those proper authorities are. I know the fire department's one, but that's not the only one. I want to, in item number 22, it says, if warranted, remediation will be to a level that poses no risk, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to read, if warranted, by the Director of Public Utilities. I want all the conditions to apply only to proposed Lot 1. And as the director recommended, I would like some additional monitoring wells, so you can add that as condition, move 30 down to 31 and make that 30, however you want to number them. Adding those additional monitoring wells, I think, is good. I also want to see downlighting.
Yep.
And I want to see the landscaping buffer a little better defined. Those are just my things. If anybody has anything else that they would like to convey, by all means, contact the Community Development Department. Talk to Adam. Yes, sir.
Just clarification about the landscaping. Is there a preference amongst the commission as to what you want to see as part of that landscape buffer?
I think a 50-foot buffer is too much. But I would like, I mean, you do this for a living. We're trying to mitigate the sound and the light. And however best you think, generally, you're going to get a physical fence and probably some vegetation on one side of it.
And then would this be along the proposed Lot 1 or the proposed Lot 3, the one that's directly abutting?
So I would say, because we don't know what may go on Lot 3 yet, we'll start with Lot 1 because that's what's under consideration right now. But if you know of a plan for Lot 3 that isn't public yet, then I would be okay with moving it to the perimeter of Lot 3, the goal is to prevent noise and light from spilling into the residential neighborhood. I imagine they get tons of noise right now. As a matter of fact, I think we went out there and did some testing between the interstate on one side and Hoover on one side and HH on the other side. I mean, that's a lot of noise and traffic. And then Commissioner Arntzen, you had some?
Yeah, regarding the spill response and monitoring plan, I just would like to make sure that it's both developed and developed by the responsible party by a hydrogeologist, and NR 700 hydrogeologist, and be developed in general accordance with NR 700. That's the DNR code for spills and remediations, and that the city has a hydrogeologist review and approve the plan. And I know that the city has consultants on retainer and they have a hydrogeologist, so.
I don't know if we have anybody on retainer, but.
Well, however you guys do that.
We have access.
But it's to address a lot of these questions about adequacy and whatnot, you get professionals to develop it. Kwik Trip folks have these people, you're familiar with it. Straightforward, but then you got a professional, somebody signing off on it, taking responsibility for it.
Thank you. And again, this isn't the be-all, end-all. If anyone has any comments, I forgot who asked the question about you asked the question about when are we supposed to say this? Anytime between now and next month, provide any feedback that you haven't provided tonight or clarification on what you did tonight, because this is recorded. They're going to go through it. They're going to rework the conditions, and we'll bring it back next month. So if anybody has any feedback, yes, sir. Up here, though.
I just had a response question about the spill response plan being developed by the licensed hydrogeologist. I'm a registered engineer with the state of Wisconsin. Generally, I prepare those internally with Kwik Trip. I've done them for several locations in wellhead protection areas. So I don't know if that could be
I am going to leave that up to staff. No offense, but we don't want a fox designing the hen house.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that sounded really, really bad, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
I would rather have a third party, and I think I speak for Commissioner Arntzen, someone who doesn't have skin in the game to review it.
Okay.
And we have access to those, so.
Well, and also like for case closure requests, if it involves groundwater, it needs to be signed off on by a hydrogeologist. If it doesn't have groundwater, then an engineer can sign off on it. But, the DNR makes the distinction of if you're making calls on groundwater, it should be a groundwater professional.
No. Thank you. All right, the motion is to postpone until next month with staff taking comments, bringing it back with all the things that we've asked for.
And now this serves as the public hearing, right? There wouldn't be another public hearing?
Correct. But I mean, you've been around long enough to know we don't.
I know, you let it.
We don't restrict anybody from speaking. We may be a little more stringent on the amount of time, but generally we're pretty good about this.
Okay.
So all those in favor of postponing until next month signify by, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
No, you're good.
Oh, you were
I'm ready to vote.
Jump the gun. All those in favor of postponing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to that? And we'll see that next month. Based on that, I'm going to ask the commissioners, does it make sense to postpone the next two items as well, the car wash and the sign?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we are not going to act on either one of those, and we'll bring those back next month, so we can do it all at once and not do weird things a little bit here, a little bit there. So everybody's okay with that, yes?
Correct.
Good. Thank you very much. That concludes. No, that concludes everything for the Kwik Trip. If you would like to stay and see Mr. Pritchard's conceptual subdivision plat review, you are certainly welcome to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes to allow people to vacate. Please go outside if you want to chat, because we do still have a meeting to finish. We will reconvene to item number 6, which is a request from Bill Pritchard, representing Elizabeth Revocable Trust for a conceptual subdivision plat review for a proposed subdivision on an unaddressed parcel off of West Zinda Drive with the parcel identified in your packet. Adam.
All right, so the image on the left-hand side of the screen shows the area in question shaded in kind of the pink shaded color. So this conceptual plat would represent a replatting of an existing council-approved subdivision, as well as subdividing the parcel, the westernmost parcel, kind of the L-shaped, C-shaped parcel. I guess a few notes just procedurally. So this is just a conceptual plat review. No approval, no action is needed by this commission tonight. This is merely an opportunity to provide general commentary to the applicant prior to going through the formal, rigid consideration process of a preliminary and a final subdivision plat review. So just a few notes that I included in the packet. So all the proposed outlots intended for residential use would be proposed in R2 single-family residential zoning designation. That is consistent with really most of the properties surrounding here, with the exception of some of the conservancy land. And once you get north by like Cap Services there, you start to intermerse that area with commercial zoning. The area is quite wet. You can see, maybe hard to see on the slide here, but in the packet, there was a wetland delineation conducted of the other image. There was a wetland delineation conducted for the area, so you can see kind of the hatched off area with the wetland symbol. That would designate the area of delineated wetlands, whereas areas where that shaded background doesn't exist would be areas that fall outside of the wetland areas. At least initially, these parcels would meet the minimum standards of the R2 zoning district, minimum 8,000 square feet in lot size to be exact. Yeah, I think that's kind of the skinny option. It would be utilizing the existing platted, albeit retweaking the configuration of the street with the cul-de-sac, serving those parcels 1 through 13, and then utilizing an existing private driveway, extending it with that turnaround to service parcels 15 through 19. So I think that's about it, at least right now. So again, this is just an opportunity to provide general feedback, and then the applicant and his designer is in the audience as well.
So again, conceptual, we're not approving anything tonight. We're just looking for feedback. If you like everything, think it's okay, great. If you don't, yes, sir. Arnson Schuler.
I'm not sure, but I think there are some interesting geologic features there. I think there are sandstone outcrops there. I don't know if there are caves or holes or something in that area. I haven't poked around too much, but I think something over there, nothing to protect, it's nothing, but anyway, something to be aware of. And if you got unique, semi-unique geologic feature in an area, it would be good to save it or acknowledge it, maybe make use of it somehow or another, but at least be aware of it.
I own the property for...
Mr. Pritchard, I'm going to need you to come to the microphone if you want to speak. Just because people at home or listening to the recording won't be able to hear you from back there. You need a microphone.
I've owned the property for 30 years, and I lived over in that, within a block of this property for most of the 30 years. There are some interesting geological things, but they're all on the north side of the railroad tracks. This is on the south side.
Oh, all right, all right.
Nothing.
All right. Yeah, I knew they were somewhere over there. I didn't know specifically where, so good, thanks.
Commissioner Schuler.
Well, there were 3 deer there this afternoon.
Big bucks? Any bucks, or are they shed already?
You'd have to ask the 2 he shot. I don't know.
Generally, it's somewhere around this time where they start shedding.
Well, I guess, Adam, is there any minimum amount of buildable area on a lot that's required in a situation like this, where most of it's, conservancy kind of land, and it's hard to kind of gauge the size of the so-called building pad or the building areas on the concept?
Yeah, technically there's not a minimum buildable area size. Ultimately, it's up to, I guess, staff and your folks' discretion as to, is there enough square footage on a parcel to reasonably construct some sort of improvement on it? If yes, then some sort of residential or non-residential zoning would be appropriate. If not, then keeping it as conservancy would be appropriate. And so really based off of the rudimentary building sketches relative to where the quote-unquote dry areas of the proposed parcels are, at least in my opinion, there would be enough room.
So it would be nice to maybe have an estimated area of on the lot outside of the delineated wetlands that would be.
Sure. Yeah, we can have Dexter include that.
Of course, that doesn't really get into slopes and ability to put something on there, but.
Yeah, would that be, I guess, Dexter, we can have you go to the podium, I guess, but I guess as you're walking up there, would that be a reasonable ask to put on the concept plan? Or put on the prelim plan?
That would be absolutely reasonable to add that in. And just to kind of add on to that, we did reach out to the DNR just to see if there was specific setbacks or anything like that they would want to see with wetlands adjacent to residential properties. And as you can see, I don't know what page it is, there is some rain gardens kind of shown where we have impacts to wetlands. That's kind of was through those discussions with the DNR. So kind of as an additional way to mitigate around the property and make sure that we weren't impacting those wetlands in a negative way. So.
Yes, Commissioner.
Do you expect there to be any wetland fill? Either for the roads or the homes or anything?
Yes, we do think that there'll be necessary wetland fill. It'll be less than 10,000 square feet. So it'll still be under the...
For the roads?
For the total development of the site. So the way the DNR will look at it is for the full development build out, not just the roads. So.
All right, good.
Come on up.
Kwik Trip. I'm the EH&S manager for Alstrom. Our pipeline runs through 12, 13, 14, 15. Right away, just south of the High Lines. So 13, I think, is our biggest concern with the subdivision, and just the buildable area that would be left with the pipeline that runs through there. So that's just, Bill, I've had some conversations with him. We're in support, and we've got easements that allow for, encasing that pipeline in concrete. But we just, we can provide the GPS coordinates of the pipeline for a little bit better when it comes to where it's at. anything else from us, we're willing to do whatever it takes, along with, we do inspect that, and that's between 3 million and 4 million gallons of effluent go through that pipe on a daily basis. So it's not a small pipe. It's a 16-inch pipe, and we're pumping a lot of water through there. So just
Thank you. All right, any other comments? Anyone in the audience? Anybody? Come on up.
My name is Jackie Shimke. I live at 440 West Trillium Court, Stevens Point. So we, as a neighborhood, have already experienced a lot of issues with heavy traffic on West River Drive and losing one of our neighbors to a hit-and-run accident. So this is a concern because it's putting a lot more traffic onto that road. We already have a lot of issues with waiting for trains. There's going to be added congestion, I think, with these homes, assuming each home maybe has 2 cars at least per residence. So that's one of the concerns. It's also going to affect the Green Circle Trail that runs right through our backyard right now. I know that they will have to make some adjustments to that. That's a concern that we have. Another concern is that it's just going to destroy the wildlife habitat. We have lots of great wildlife in that neighborhood. Deer, fox, coyotes, owls. So that's another concern that we have, along with what was already suggested as far as some of the wetlands possibly being an issue to consider. And we already have, I don't know if a road will be coming in off of West Zinda Drive, but we have a lot of issues with irresponsible driving, especially when school's in session with the alternative high school. I'll say that we have a lot of issues on West Zinda Drive. So I'm afraid that this is just going to create more of a headache there as well. I know it's been mentioned that Stevens Point has issues with housing and there's a housing crisis, but I'd ask that we see the study that's been done showing that there's a housing crisis, or if one hasn't been done, you possibly consider getting a third-party independent study and let everybody see that so we can see the numbers showing that this is something that is unnecessary for us. Those are just some of the issues that I wanted to let you know about. Thank you.
Very much. Appreciate it. The housing study is available on our website, stevenspoint.com.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Is it acceptable for me to respond?
Sure. I'd rather not engage in a debate, so address the committee.
Yep. Just want to announce that part of our conceptual layout here in plat is incorporating the Green Circle Trail, dedicating land for that. There will be an outlet for a park, so that is part of that. As for wildlife habitat, even though there is going to be the additional parcels, all the wetlands are all being taken care of through the DNR, so that wooded area for the most part will remain wooded, other than directly where the new roadway and buildings are. So it is impactful to an extent, but overall it's still a very wooded site with the surroundings being similar. So, and then there is a connection to Zinda Drive. It does have 5 parcels that would be connected to that. So just wanted to make that statement.
Thank you very much. All right, commissioners, any other comments? Yes, go ahead.
I was seeing Chief Moody in the back there. I want to make sure that the cul-de-sacs are wide enough to allow a turning radius for all the apparatus that the fire department's using these days. I know they've got some pretty big pieces of equipment.
And expensive.
Yes, they are. But they need them.
We need those
to
old
protect
hand
us.
pumpers that they pull with horses.
We do work with community development, and they do have all our specs on what we require for those cul-de-sacs and those turnarounds at the end for our current apparatuses. So that's not an issue at all. And we always work with community development in the Bureau, so we don't see any issues moving forward.
And just for clarification, either director or zoning administrator, the smaller one that's off of Zinda, does that meet the requirements that the fire department needs as a turnaround?
The specs haven't been drawn out yet, at least for the right of way, but I mean, that'll be something obviously
we
for
wanna make sure,
preliminary
right.
plat will have to be provided.
Okay, any other thoughts on the preliminary plat? Commissioner Rice?
Yeah, I guess I just had some comments, because I was on the commission, I think, when you did the other plat 6+ years ago, and there has been a demonstrated need for housing in the community for a long time, and I know some of the concerns from the neighborhood at that time was a little bit too much density. Maybe, I think there was some multi-family or duplex proposals at the time. So it looks like you've taken kind of some of that feedback and really tried to, get appropriate density, and I think it matches some of the other small little kind of pocket neighborhoods in that area. Obviously, with all of that wetland, it's pretty hard to develop it in a, really strategic grid the way that we've been able to in other parts of the city. So I think this makes sense to be able to use what somewhat limited land resources we have, find opportunities to add good housing, people like single-family R2 housing, integrating the Green Circle Trail. So, yeah, just thought overall, like some thoughtful pieces in here, and thanks for, listening to the constituency.
Commissioner Beacom.
I was just going to echo the same. I think, the housing need, really, I think it's debatable, but not debatable on type. And so single-family homes are something that we do need more of, and this being R2 single-family, I think, is appropriate, but will also be helpful.
Okay, Commissioner Schuler.
Next step, preliminary plat?
Correct.
Thank you.
Can I make just a couple of other comments?
Absolutely, come to the lectern, please.
This development is not going to be meant to be broad, marketed to a broad group of people. My thoughts are that I think there's a lot of retirees that didn't know how to or couldn't prepare for retirement. I think they're having a really tough time. They may have a paid-for house. I'm trying to offer a brand-new structure that'll never need a new roof in 20 years, never need a new furnace as long as they're alive, and I want to build something that's affordable, and I'm going to direct my marketing to retirees or soon-to-be retirees. It's not going to be restricted to that. I don't want to make any misrepresentation here. If somebody likes the neighborhood because they want their kids to go to the school on West Zinda Drive, I'm not going to tell them no, but it's going to be marketed to people that I think have fewer means than others. There was also another comment I was going to make, but senior moment, it's gone.
Thank you. All right, last chance tonight. We'll still take comments before we review the preliminary plat review, which will be probably next month. Okay, then we will move on. Monthly reports, April through November. We'll just summarize, or let me do this. In the interest of time, does anybody have any questions on those? It's the same format we always use. We're just a little backlogged. No questions? Director's report, please touch the highlights.
As presented in your packet, please let me know if you have any questions.
Perfect. You can get a raise.
Oh, my God.
You can pick your paycheck up on the second floor now.
What was our total net new constructions?
When?
This in 2025?
We don't have it.
Not yet?
No.
Not fully
Yeah.
Add up all the.
Well, you could, but you don't have December in there. Well, December.
That would be a subtle. Yeah, you could add it up and put a best guess, but I mean,
We still need to adjourn technically.
Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Undebatable.
Aye. Done.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.